At least in years past, I feel like it was much easier to submit starting lineups in week 3. But with the amount of injuries we're currently dealing with, I mean, I myself, I'm having a very difficult call. I actually just traded Tyler Algier to go get Cam Akers so I could specifically bench Jalen Waddle this week with no Tua. So yeah, if you have any questions, I'm sure that maybe you're watching this intro after the live stream happened. Drop them in the comment section. And if you could, please go help out some other people in the comments just so we can all be prepared for Sunday. Of course, I will be streaming all day Sunday morning to try to answer as many questions as possible. And if you wanted to submit any questions, you could always do so over on vlogfantasy.com. As soon as it's answered for you in a live stream, you will actually get that answer in that clip from the stream sent to you directly from the site. So you can ask a question on vlogfantasy.com at literally any time that you are wanting. But yeah, let's go ahead. Let's dive into this first question. This is actually going to be a team review here coming out from Jason. His team is To Infinity and Bijan. Says, thanks, Mason. Any suggestions on trades? We're currently 1-1, but worried as we have Rashad Pittman, Garrett Wilson not performing. So yeah, I mean, we already got to see Wilson in week 2. Obviously, it's not a situation in which we were super excited, right? I mean, at the end of the day with Garrett Wilson, it's the wide receiver that did come away with the touchdown. He again had the target volume, but the receiving yards weren't there. Now, I do think that Wilson still projects out as that low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2 rest of season. If you personally think that Aaron Rodgers will be near the top of the NFL, maybe a top 10 quarterback in total passing volume. But regardless, we'll talk about Wilson a little more when we get to the receivers. First thing is, this is going to be a deeper format, it looks like. This is a 10-team league, but it looks like you have a decent amount of flexes here. So if that is the case, then in that case, we actually do want to be building around wide receiver, particularly the depth at the wide receiver position, because we know we can start so many of these players. Now, going over to quarterback, we currently are sitting with Jaden Daniels as well as Brock Purdy. And in that instance, I am completely fine rostering 2 QBs if Daniels is your top guy. Obviously, Daniels kind of a must-start player at this point, given the rushing upside that he has. But you are operating with an extremely small sample. So potentially you could see maybe some regression from Daniels or maybe an injury based off playing style. So having Purdy here, I think is a completely fine call. I have Brock Purdy as a backup quarterback on my team right now. Typically is my starter because my quarterback room's trash, but obviously very difficult to project him in the short term with no Debo, with no Kittle, with no Ricky Sticky, with no CMC. Now going over to running back, we have Bijan at the very top. Obviously, Mixon goes down due to injury, but we have a couple viable depth pieces here. We have Rachaad White. We have Tony Pollard, a couple running backs that we definitely can play. I mean, 4 startable guys here. I mean, we should easily be able to fill in for the Joe Mixon injury. And honestly, if this was a league where you only started 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, at that point, I think I'd be in a situation in which we could say, oh, okay, maybe Tony Pollard is potentially a sell high candidate based off the very strong start he has had. However, if in the future we do get a little bit more coming out from Tajee Spears, or if Spears is healthy in week 3 and all of a sudden we actually see him kind of turning this in to a 50-50 running back split, then at that point you could see Pollard scale back. However, with the Mixon injury and with the fact that this will be a deeper starting lineup in general, I actually am completely fine holding on to Tony Pollard in this context. Now, going over to wide receiver, we have Wilson, Godwin. Obviously, Wilson maybe isn't necessarily the high-end wide receiver 1 that you drafted him to be, but I still think that he is a fine low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2, as we were mentioning previously. And this is that league. I mean, I believe it's not just a start 2 receiver 1 flex. In that instance, we actually just like having the wide receiver security and the wide receiver floor that you're going to get with Garrett Wilson. Moving beyond this, Godwin, Waddle, Pittman, JSN. I mean, a ton of viable wide receiver 2 options. Obviously, Waddle's a little less exciting in the short term. And if we were submitting a starting lineup, I think my favorite options for this week, obviously, Bijan, Wilson are in your lineup. I think we'd be throwing Rachaad White in there at RB2. Wide receiver 2, I think you'd be going with Chris Godwin. And then for the flexes in order, I would go Pollard, Pittman, JSN, then Jalen Waddle. So yeah, I think Waddle's probably not going to be making that impact for you in the short term. However, because we have so many viable receivers, you are in a very fortunate position in which we can just afford to be benching Jalen Waddle in the short term and then looking for that upside when Tua does come back. And then going over to tight end, we are currently sitting with Parkinson and Hunter Henry. Now, if this is a situation in which you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, in that call, I think you'd be very much incentivized to potentially go through and try to sell Rachaad White and go get a tight end, and try to sell Tony Pollard and go get a tight end, and see if we can pivot over to that elite level tight end option, just because tight end will be making up so much of our lineup from a week to week perspective. However, specifically in this situation, where it does appear that you have multiple flex spots where you are able to start a bunch of wide receivers, in that case, tight end's going to make up a slightly lower percentage of our starting lineup output from week to week perspective. So in that instance, I actually am probably chilling here and don't necessarily think you need to upgrade tight end. So a couple different things. One, I want to reiterate, if this is a situation in which you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, and potentially the league analyzer, for whatever reasons, pulling up the wrong league settings, then in that case, I do think that you're highly incentivized to take one of our depth running backs or take one of our depth receivers and go upgrade to a long-term viable tight end. Go buy it low on somebody like Dalton Kincaid, where the underlying usage was actually very good through the first 2 weeks, and the passing volume should be there going into the future. However, if we're pulling up the league settings correctly, where this is that very deep starting lineup, and instead we don't really care about the tight end position because it's going to make up such a small percentage of it, then I actually think that this is a phenomenal squad. I actually think that this is a situation in which you don't need to be pivoting to a different option. So obviously it kind of is up to your league settings. And based off what I'm seeing with your league settings right now, I think you've already done a phenomenal job of optimizing for that. But yeah, thank you again, my friend, for being a member of the Flock Sport on the channel. Another thing that we can say is, if you look at the league analyzer, we currently are sitting here with the second team. So, I mean, there's not much that I can say. You already have an incredibly strong squad to begin with. But yeah, thank you again. Really hope I was able to help you out in some way with this. And I do want to reiterate for everybody as well, of course, if y'all wanted to get a free team review on flockfantasy.com, you can see that this was a free team review here for Infinity. You can do so by taking advantage of an offer that we have with Underdog Fantasy. You can find a link to Underdog with the link in the description or the comment section. And if you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog, you're actually going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you will get a free team review on flockfantasy.com. And you're actually going to be getting that CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half total yard, for tomorrow. They have an additional gimme pick. I mean, they're just running out a ton of promos. Literally, I'm up almost $300 on Underdog this year. Not because I'm any good at pick'ems, just because I'm taking advantage of the promos every single day. And if you're new to Underdog and use code FLOCK as well, you're actually going to get an additional free pick, the Patrick Mahomes special pick'em, more than less than half total yard. So make sure you take advantage of that. But again, if you were wanting that free team review on the site, just after you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog, make sure you set up an account on flockfantasy.com. That way, with the same email address as your Underdog account, that way I know where to get you that free team review. But let's move this over to our next squad. This is going to be Hertz to watch, by far and away the number one team with the league analyzer here. You're saying we're struggling with the squad. It is a 10-team league where we only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So in that 10-team format where you only start 2 receivers and a flex, in this instance, we really do not care at all about wide receiver depth. This is very different here, where instead we are highly incentivized to go get the elite quarterback, to go get the elite tight ends, to build around maybe the top receivers or the top running backs, but specifically down on our bench, we are wanting to try to optimize with running backs that are an injury away to make a massive, massive difference. Now, pulling this up, we have exactly what we're looking for. We have the elite quarterback with Jalen Hertz. We have the elite tight end with Sam Laporta. Sam Laporta was my tight end 1 coming into the season. Obviously, can't really be the case now based off how well McBride's playing. But yeah, I have Sam Laporta as my tight end in the Flock League. I took him in round 4. And honestly, going into the future, I do think that Sam Laporta is going to be significantly better than what he has been through the first 2 weeks. And then with Jalen Hertz, I also view Hertz as an every week starter here, kind of regardless of matchup. So love that we have the elite onesies given the league settings. And at the same time, we obviously know that you're not having to roster a backup quarterback or a backup tight end when you're currently sitting with this squad. Now, going over to running back, we currently have Breece Ramadre there at the top with Ramondre Stevenson. Definitely a running back that y'all are, okay to start from week to week perspective. Sadly, Ramadre appears to be my RB2 in the flock league right now. Obviously, the issue remains the same as it was previously, in which you're just looking at a player that is stuck in one of the worst offenses in the NFL. So there are going to be some games where you just absolutely have him utterly collapse. But when you have the anchor in Breece Hall, it is going to give you some flexibility here, and that at running back 2, we don't need to be extremely strong, especially if we're rostering all these guys like Carson Steele, Jerome Ford, Braylon Allen, Alexander Madison, where individually they do have the upside to potentially turn into the running back 2 on this team. So yeah, I actually really like the running back room, specifically with it in mind that we don't necessarily have to have Ramadre penciled in as RB2 rest of season. We have some upside to pivot here to a different option. Now, going over to wide receiver, we have 3 wide receivers that you can potentially project out as wide receiver 1s. We have Nico, we have Rice, we have Ayuk. Obviously, Ayuk's been very disappointing, but he wasn't at training camp. Understandable that he starts a little slower here. And at the same time, if you are looking at Brandon Ayuk, now with the Debo and George Kittle injuries, it does look like he is set up to just absolutely smash. So ultimately, as we're looking at this wide receiver room, when you have those 3 anchors at the very top, I think you're in a very comfortable position. And really maybe the only thing that we can look at is, what are we wanting to do with these guys at the bottom end? I would say obviously Flowers and Jaden Reed are phenomenal depth pieces, guys that we can use during the bye weeks, guys that we can have in case that there is an injury. However, as we go over and look at a player like Demarcus Robinson, I would say that while Demarcus Robinson in a league with multiple flex spots is 100% a viable pickup, just given the fact that, he does step into a situation in which he could be the wide receiver 1 for Matthew Stafford here. At the same time, I don't see what world he ever actually hits your starting lineup. So if you could potentially, and I know we're stretching it here, if you could potentially package together Demarcus Robinson with another one of these running backs that we just picked up like Carson Steele and go pivot over to just a slight running back upgrade, I think that would be extremely interesting, in that I don't even think you have to be rostering a 6th receiver here, because it's a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, and it's a 10-team format. I would almost prefer to use that roster spot on a high upside running back that's an injury away, similar to what we are doing with Braylon Allen, of course. Then you see him just absolutely smash on Thursday. So one, if we can't get anything for Robinson, completely fine. I would just say if he maybe doesn't do anything this week, then at that point, he's the guy we turn off this team to pick up another RB. And then, yeah, as we already discussed with Laporta, we're chilling, don't need a roster a backup. I think that honestly, this is a strong team. The only thing I would do personally is take it one step further in terms of what we are doing here with the roster construction at the very bottom, and potentially roster 2 additional running backs in comparison to the receivers, knowing that we are so strong at wide receiver at the very top. But obviously, it's a phenomenal team. We are number 1 here with the league analyzer, so there's not too much I can add, but really do appreciate you and hope I was able to help you out in some way, my friend. Now, moving this over, this is going to be for Dynasty Run. This is a 12-team start 7. So this is a 2 wide receiver single flex format. Here we are number 3 with the league analyzer. So we are near the very top of the league, but similarly, this is that 2 wide receiver 1 flex league. So the wide receiver depth isn't going to matter as much. Typically, I'm not wanting to roster too many of these names. Now, of course, I will say a couple different things. One, it's a 12-team format, so our expectations of what we are going to have available to us down there on the waiver wire is going to be definitely lowered. So going through and making 2-for-1 deals maybe is going to be a little bit less appealing than it would be in that 10-team league where you start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, just because that waiver wire pickup that we're going to have is a little less viable. Now, going over to quarterback, we are currently sitting with Dak and Tua. If we have Dak Prescott and Tua here, I think that this is an okay quarterback room in the long term once Tua comes back in, because we can just be playing the matchups, kind of be going back and forth. However, if we're sitting here right now with Dak Prescott as kind of our only option at QB, definitely a little bit nervous in that you don't have the rushing upside. We haven't seen the passing volume be there through the first 2 weeks. Now, of course, just because it wasn't through the first 2 weeks doesn't necessarily mean that's guaranteed to be the case the entire time. But yeah, I mean, if Tua's on the IR for you, I almost wouldn't even mind picking up another quarterback off the waiver wire if you can get someone like Justin Fields, just to see if we can have access to a little more upside with a rushing option, especially if there is that outside chance that Tua does not come back for a very, very long time. Now, going over to running back, we have Kyren at the top. I'm actually very worried about Kyren Williams. If you're looking at the underlying situation that you have in Los Angeles here, you have 5 O-linemen currently on the IR. We have Kupp injured. We have Puka injured. So I do think that there's that outside chance that we just see a complete collapse from this Los Angeles Rams offense over the next few weeks. So if you could pivot from like Kyren Williams and get to Jonathan Taylor, a running back that's been much worse through the first 2 weeks of the season, but I think his offense will actually be better than the Rams going forward. I wouldn't mind that pivot, to be honest with you. I'm looking at James Conner. James Conner locked and loaded RB1 almost until later in the season. I do feel like he is going to be a ticking time bomb. He's my running back running back 1 in the Flock League. So I'm really hoping Conner is this productive all season, but there is that underlying feel with James Conner that he's a ticking time bomb, that you are potentially going to see an injury. You are potentially going to see Trey Benson expanding his role later in the season. So if you had some super compelling price where you could pivot off of James Conner, definitely wouldn't be something that I would hesitate with. I just personally haven't gotten a great offer myself. I think you're probably not going to be looking to actively shop him until weeks 3, 4, 5. And then we have quality running back depth pieces. Singletary can be a desperation play if we need to, obviously, as the workload just in a very bad offense. Braylon Allen is the situation, which I guess you could call him a desperation play during a bye week with a healthy Breece Hall. But if Breece Hall were to go down, I would think that Braylon Allen at that point almost immediately turns into a top 12 running back in fantasy. And then Rico Dowdle is a running back that's definitely worth that Ross spot. It's been extremely difficult to figure out what the expectations should be in terms of the split with Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle going into the future, just because the only 2 games that we've had from the Dallas Cowboys, they've been not even real football games. I mean, first they boat race the Browns, then they get boat raced by the Saints. So we haven't gotten to see what this role's actually going to be for Rico Dowdle in this offense in a normal Dallas situation. But nonetheless, I mean, obviously it's a running back room that does have upside. I definitely think you could afford to upgrade. Now going over to receiver, this is where things get difficult. I typically don't want to be rostering this many receivers in a league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, but we have AJ Brown injured. We have Cooper Kupp injured. We have Keenan Allen injured. So as it stands right now, our wide receiver 1 on this roster is actually going to be Brandon Ayuk. Our wide receiver 2 is going to be Jameson Williams. And then for our flex play, we're actually probably having to either decide between Shakir or Devin Singletary, which I honestly should have ranked Singletary ahead of Shakir in the flex rankings this week. We did update that on the site, but in terms of what we are doing with the video, kind of made that mistake. I do think I'd probably go Devin Singletary over Khalil Shakir for your flex spot this week. But nonetheless, I do think that you're justified to roster this many receivers when we're dealing with the injuries at the very top at the moment. Going over to tight end, we have Pitts, a tight end that I think will be much better going into the future. Obviously, he's been very bad, but he is playing a career high when it comes to his snap rate, when it comes to the routes that he is running every single week in this offense. Has been a lot better with no Arthur Smith, no Jonnu Smith here. And then I'm fine with you rostering Parkinson as well, just because he could get flooded with targets with no Cooper Kupp, with no Puka Nacua. But overall, I mean, I think this is a team that in the long run, as we get these guys back like A.J. Brown, Cooper Kupp, Keenan Allen, I'm probably going to be pivoting off of, say, Jalen Tolbert at the bottom end, picking up another running back off the waiver wire. I do think you could potentially throw Kyren Williams, James Conner on the trade block. If you get a phenomenal offer, then great. We get a phenomenal offer. We can go for it. But definitely not something that you have to sell those backs, because obviously their workloads are just so damn nice at this second, right this second. But I think that's all I have for you. Again, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the flock, supporting the channel. Hope that we are able to help you out in some way here. But again, this is another team that's up there at 3 with the league analyzer, right? So you're already in a phenomenal situation. But let's move this over and let's actually get a start set question answered. This is Tank Dell or Jalen Waddle for our wide receiver 2 slot. I actually think that Xavier Worthy is kind of in play here as well, given the fact that when you're looking at Worthy, this is a wide receiver that has no Hollywood, is probably in a more pass happy offense in general with no Pacheco. So if you wanted to go with Xavier Worthy, I wouldn't fault you for it. But between Waddle and Dell, I'm going to go tank Dell. Sadly, I have Waddle in my league. I wish the answer was Waddle. But the issue is just Dell's going to be in a significantly better offense. And at the same time, you do have just the overall target share looking fine in Houston through the first few weeks. I actually think that Dell's going to be much better into the future than what he has been. But let's move this over to DHG Monsters. This is another free review, I believe, from the Underdog promo. So definitely, like I said, if you want a team review, highly recommend just going and using promo code FLOCK on Underdog, getting it for free. It's technically, you have to make a $10 deposit, but you get all the other Underdog promos as well. But anyway, this is the Trisomy 69s. Now, this is a 12 team start, 2 wide receiver, 1 flex. So the wide receiver depth doesn't matter too much here. It's a team where we are near the bottom with the league analyzer, so definitely want to see what we can be doing to adjust. Now, starting off at quarterback, obviously, we're extremely strong here. We have Jalen Hertz. We have Jordan Love. We're never starting Jordan Love over Jalen Hertz based off the rushing upside that you get with Hertz. Now, I will say, as we go over and as we look at some of these other teams with just garbage quarterbacks, like this team here is Purdy and Herbert. If we could potentially package up sending them Jordan Love once Love is back and fully healthy, say with the wide receiver and going and making a 2-for-1 upgrade. Like if we can go Jordan Love and Deontay Johnson to pivot up to like Tank Dell, I think that would be very interesting. Or maybe send them, if somehow possible, Love, Evan Ingram to Laporta. I would love that. If we could somehow send them, say, Love, Carson Steele, Love, Isaiah Pacheco, and go get Rashad White, I would love that. But obviously that team just doesn't have much value in general. Going through and looking at this squad, they're currently sitting with Jared Goff and Derek Carr. If they would be interested in a Jordan Love swap, I mean, I would love to send them, say, Jordan Love, Deontay Johnson, and pick up Puka Nacua. Send them 2 players that we're not playing right now anyway for somebody that could potentially really upgrade the lineup in the long term. Or send them potentially, say, Jordan Love and Carson Steele to go get Tony Pollard. I think that could be interesting. This team here currently sitting with Deshaun Watson, Will Levis. Obviously, they would be a really nice Jordan Love trade candidate. Maybe Jordan Love, Deontay Johnson, go get Jalen Waddle. And yeah, we probably wouldn't start Waddle on our team right now, but we could in the long term here. Maybe Jordan Love and a deep running back like Ezekiel Elliott to go get DeAndre Swift. I think that's another play that we could potentially make. But ultimately, yeah, when you have Hertz, once Love is back, the main thing is we are going to see if we can go through and use him as some trade bait here. Now, going over to running back, we have the anchor RB with Jonathan Taylor. But beyond that, we don't necessarily have a ton of confidence with our running back 2 situation. We have the injury to Isaiah Pacheco. Obviously, Pacheco was crushing it for us. This is probably why we're kind of down here with the league analyzer. We have the injury to Pacheco. We have the injury to Evan Ingram. But nonetheless, it does suck to lose Pacheco, even if we replace him with Steele, because with Steele coming in, it's not necessarily like we can guarantee that we're going to get this same 1-for-1 workload or the efficiency with any workload that you had from Pacheco. But we have the upside with Steele. We have Zeke. We have Bucky Irving. I wouldn't mind going through and actually dropping Greg Dortch to pick up another running back off the waiver wire here to potentially find somebody else that could help us. Going over to receiver, we have Malik Neighbors, DK Metcalf in the starting lineup. Jaden Reed, definitely going to be a viable flex play when we get Jordan Love back in. We have Shakir and Deontay Johnson, but specifically because this is that league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, I actually wouldn't mind at all going through and seeing if we can try to squeeze out some of that value from Shakir or Deontay in a trade, as we were mentioning previously. And then going over to tight ends, we are currently sitting with Evan Ingram and Hunter Henry. So tight ends, I definitely think that we are chilling here. I mean, obviously we will get Ingram back in the long term. If you thought that Hunter Henry would have been an interesting drop to go get somebody like Parkinson, definitely can make that pivot. But really the main thing that this team needs to be doing is trying to package Jordan Love with one of these depth receivers to go get an upgrade at wide receiver, or Jordan Love with one of the depth running backs, get an upgrade at running back. And then I'd also drop Greg Dortch to pick up another running back off the waiver wire. But I hope I was able to help you out again. Thank you again, my friends. And yeah, it's just going to be difficult when we have the Pacheco injury. Now let's move this over to Johnny Swims. Appreciate you, my guy. This is the number one team with the league analyzer. Says, I made some awesome trades early on. Immediately following my draft, I had a league mate who was high on Dell. I traded him Dell for Godwin straight up. Phenomenal move. After week 1 and traded Diggs and Montgomery for Nico Collins. Dear God, that's nice too. Those are such good calls too, because they weren't obvious at the time. But obviously now with hindsight being 2020, we just know that, yeah, you made out like a freaking bandit here. But anyway, yeah, let's go ahead. Let's dive into this. This is the number one team in this league. And this is a 10-team format where waiver wire options should be plentiful. I mean, the worst running backs on this team right now are Jaleel McLaughlin and Tyler Algier. And also, you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So the shallow lineup is going to make us chase the elite quarterback, chase the elite tight ends, and try to make as many 2-for-1 deals as we possibly can. And here at quarterback, we are sitting with Josh Allen. Absolutely love to see it. Obviously, we can start Josh Allen every single week, regardless of matchup. Don't need a roster or backup. I mean, the passing volume wasn't there last week, but it was a very unique game on Thursday night. So I think Josh Allen's going to be much better going into the future. We have Sam Laporta. I know Sam Laporta really hasn't done anything, but I'm still standing by. Definitely concerning. I definitely moved him down from being tight end 1 overall. Definitely have to drop him at least behind Trey McBride, and definitely a lot closer to these other guys like Bowers at this point. But I do think that Laporta can be a little bit better going into the future, and I do think that you should still project him out to be that solid tight end 1 rest of season. Now, going over to what we have at running back, we have the anchor with Breece, a running back that we can start every week regardless of matchup. Definitely don't need to be panicking here. Like, definitely not thinking, oh, Braylon Allen's going to be coming in and this makes Breece Hall a low-end RB1. No, Breece Hall's still been a high-end RB1, regardless of if you've had Braylon Allen emerging or not. Travis Etienne, solid RB2. Sounds like Bigsby's going to be good to go this week, but Etienne has a large enough workload. What we really need to see is we just need to see this Jags offense be a little bit better. But the Jags are about to fall to 0-3, so it is a tough scene in general. And then going down beyond this, we have Ezekiel Elliott. We have Jaleel McLaughlin. So, I mean, you are in a decent spot. Obviously, if we were to have a Bijan Robinson injury, Tyler Algier kind of becomes a league winner, probably playing Tyler Algier over Travis Etienne. But ultimately, it's a very strong running back room, right? I definitely think that I would like to be rostering maybe a few more running backs if possible. But going over and looking at the wide receiver position, all these guys have so much upside. There's no way in hell that you could potentially cut anybody here. We have Nico. We have Smith. We have Godwin. All of whom at the moment look like wide receiver 1s. Obviously, we can say that some of these guys are wide receiver 2s in the long term. We have Pickens, Rome, Keon, these younger wide receivers that can continue to get better as the season goes on. So as we're sitting here with this team, I actually think that you're in a situation in which this is a very clear opportunity, if we can get it, to make that 2-for-1 trade up, where we send somebody like Godwin and Travis Etienne to get a straight up elite running back. Like, let's go ahead. Let's target some of these teams that have bad wide receiver rooms. I mean, this team has the Deebo Samuel injury. So right now they're having to start Zay Flowers, Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas, or Amari Cooper. Like, this team is a little weak at receiver. So if you could possibly take a depth receiver such as Godwin, I mean, obviously Pickens would be a no-brainer, but package him, say, with Travis Etienne and pivot over and get that upgrade to Jonathan Taylor. I mean, we would absolutely love that if we can make that 2-for-1 deal with this team and give them that additional receiver. Now, going over to another team that's maybe a little bit desperate at wide receiver, this team has Diggs as their top option. They have Diggs, Pittman, Ladd McConkey, Shaheed, Cortland Sutton. So if we could potentially take one of the deeper receivers, such as like Rome Odunze, Keon Coleman, package up with Travis Etienne, and pivot over to James Cook. I think that'd be very interesting. Or another option is you could look to sell one of the elite receivers, somebody like Nico Collins and Travis Etienne, to see if we can go back and get Bijan Robinson. Does seem like this is the team that we traded for Nico Collins with, though. So I don't know how they would feel about all of a sudden turning around and just giving us that massive, massive profit right away on Nico. But yeah, that's the primary objective that we would have, right? Is to sell one of these receivers with Travis Etienne to go get that running back upgrade. But yeah, we have so many receivers here in a league where you can only start 2 wide receivers in a flex. And at the same time, they're too good to potentially look to move on from. So you're definitely to the point where you are trying to make 2-for-1 deals and upgrade. And going over to tight ends, you currently are sitting with Sam Laporta. And like I said, I think Laporta will be better going into the future. I don't necessarily know if there are any adjustments that we need to be making here. If you find yourself with an open roster spot, maybe you can go ahead and roster another tight end, but definitely not a situation in which I think we need to go out and trade for one. But overall, I mean, obviously phenomenal deal that you've made so far. And what's great about them is they weren't obvious wins at the time, but now they definitely look like they are. And of course, if there's anything I can do for you, my friend, don't hesitate to reach out to me and let me know. I really hope that I was able to help you out in some way with this. Okay. Now let's move this over to our next question. It's going to be a trade question from Shiesty. It says, already made the trade. I have Burrow, JT, Gibbs, Debo, Neighbors, Andrews, and it's a 12-team format. Did I win? So going from Deontay Johnson to Devin Singletary, I do not care whatsoever. Really, this is a pivot from James Cook to Brandon Ayuk. Obviously, James Cook has been significantly better than Ayuk so far this season. But going into the future, I'm still a little bit concerned that you are going to have some more rushing touchdowns vultured from James Cook by Josh Allen. With Brandon Ayuk, you're in a situation where he's the last man standing in what should be a very good offense. I know a lot of people are going to hate me for saying this, but I think I actually take the Ayuk and Singletary side. But let's submit that. Go over to the next question from Rob Dawgs. Now, again, thank you, my friend. And y'all can see in the live stream real quick that this is that free roster submission by taking advantage of that offer that we have with Underdog Fantasy, which you can find that link in the description, in the comment section, in the live chat. And using promo code FLOCK, you can actually get a free team review in one of these live streams. You just have to make sure that you have an account set up on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your Underdog account. That way I can grant you with your free team review voucher. But also code FLOCK on Underdog, you'll get that 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Code FLOCK on Underdog, you'll also get that CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half a total yard here. And on top of it, if you're new to Underdog with code FLOCK, you're going to be getting that Patrick Mahomes free pick, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday as well. So make sure you take advantage of that. Like I said, I'm up 300. I'm almost 300 on Underdog this year, primarily just because I'm taking advantage of the promos. But let's move this back over to our team that we're looking at. This is Rob Dawgs. It's a team that's currently middle of the road with the league analyzer. We had bad luck getting the 11th draft pick, definitely the worst pick that you could have had in fantasy. It was a struggle the whole draft, and then we lost Puka. We're 0-2, and we've been trying hard to make trades to win now, but haven't had any luck making things happen. Curious to hear the thoughts on the squad. Honestly, for our round 1, round 2 pick going down, for us to be 6th in the league analyzer, that is kind of impressive in its own rights. But let's go ahead and let's move this over. So this is that league where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So ultimately, we are not super concerned about the wide receiver depth in this format. Definitely want to be prioritizing those high upside running backs that we're going to have down on the bench. And yeah, as we sit here, we are currently sitting with a ton of running backs on this bench. I think it's going to be a much better team going into the future, to be honest with you. But starting off at quarterback, we are currently sitting with Kyler. Kyler has the rushing upside, has the ceiling to just be our only quarterback on this team. Don't necessarily need to be rostering 2 separate guys here. And then going over to tight ends, we have Dalton Kincaid, another player that we can just start every single week, regardless of matchup. Definitely not having to look to make any pivots with either one of these situations, and definitely not having to have a backup, as we already mentioned. And going over, and I know Kincaid's been bad through the first 2 weeks, but you look at the underlying usage and project out the passing volume going into the future. I think that's going to be a great situation for Kincaid. Okay. 44 MS Eustace. How long does it take for a voucher to go through? Just made an Underdog account. So Underdog gives me the email addresses the day after. So if you signed up to Underdog Fantasy today, then I should get the email address tomorrow, and then you should get the setup the next day, my friend. But anyway, going over to running back, we have the anchor with Jahmyr Gibbs. This is a situation in which we can start him every single week. Gives us a lot of flexibility. And at running back 2, we are just rostering as many of these guys as possible, throwing darts at the dartboard, hoping one of them are going to hit. We have Zach Moss. With Zach Moss, definitely a running back that I'm very excited about going into this week. And honestly, kind of the long term here. Because if you're looking at the underlying usage that you've had, it does appear that Zach Moss is kind of just the locked and loaded starter for this team. Like Chase Brown really doesn't have a role in this offense, surprisingly. And I expect this to be a much better offense going into the future. So as we sit here at running back, I think we're chilling with Zach Moss at RB2. The other guys, Benson, Dowdle, Algier, Bigsby, Pirine, high upside backs where the starter would go down in front of them. If their situation were to change, they can be like the next Zach Charbonnet with Kenneth Walker, right? They can become kind of automatic starters for us. So specifically in a league where you start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, I like the ability to potentially see that random pop at running back. If it's a league where you have multiple flex spots or you can start 4 or 5 receivers, then at that point, it's not really a luxury that you have with those bench spots to just go ahead and roster the running backs that could pop. You need viable receivers, but here in this league, that doesn't really matter. Going over to wide receiver, we've been decimated. Smith, obviously, great spot, set up as a wide receiver 1 in the short term, wide receiver 2 in the long term. Waddle, wide receiver 3 in the short term, wide receiver 2 in the long term. Puka, nothing in the short term. Worthy, a long-term play. Rome, a long-term play. Ricky Pearsall, a long-term play. So this may be the issue that you have with the squad. It's a team that's 0-2 that really needs to be focusing in on how we can get points in and how we can win right this second. Where as we're looking at it, you have so many rookies. We have guys dealing with either their own injury or an injury to their quarterback. So you are just put in a very awkward situation in general. So honestly, what I think I would look to do with this team, if possible, is if we could pivot off of, say, Puka and Waddle, send them in a 2-for-1 deal to go get a low-end wide receiver 1 right now to a team that maybe has the depth where they can afford to give one up. Like, I know maybe it seems like it would be an overpay here, but potentially going out and getting somebody like Nico Collins and selling Puka and, Puka and Waddle, I think it could be a very smart play for this team if they are sitting at 2-0 and they go, okay, I can afford to wait for the long term. Whereas we're in a situation where we just simply can't. We just need to win right now. So I think that's the move. We're looking to either sell somebody that's currently injured or sell somebody where we are looking at a rookie with just the long-term upside. And we just need to try to optimize to get points in right now. If you don't want to do that and you want to see how we perform this week, and then if we fall to 0-3, then kind of panic and then sell these injured players for 90 cents on the dollar, then we can. But based off the injuries that we have to these situations, I think you can just go ahead and try to maybe sell them for 90 cents on the dollar now to make sure that we can stay competitive as it stands. But we're going to go over to a trade question from Sick With It. 1 second. Get in here, you bad dog. This is DeMarcus Robinson versus Adam Thielen. Should we make this trade DeMarcus for Thielen? Adam crushed it at the beginning of the last season for me. Very different situation. Last season, Adam Thielen was all by himself. Now he's another year older. I believe he is 33 or pushing 33. And at the same time, they take a wide receiver in round 1 with Xavier Legette. And on top of this, they bring in Deontay Johnson. So very, very different situation with Adam Thielen. I think I would almost very easily prefer DeMarcus Robinson. Saying with D-Rob being the number one, I feel like he'll get all the attention from the defense this week. We have CMC, Pacheco, and Debo injured. Starting Tank, JSN, Mason, Aaron Jones. We need a flex between Robinson, Pirine, Downs, Chase Brown, Ladd, Ferguson. Appreciate you, my guy. I think we're probably just going to go ahead and honestly play Ladd if you're in a situation in which Justin Herbert's good to go. And if Herbert's not, then I think you play Demarcus Robinson. But really in no circumstance do I think Adam Thielen is appealing here, even if the offense will be better with no Bryce Young. Now, G-Dub coming over at the start set. Here, we are really looking at what we're going to be doing in the flex. I think between all these flex players, really the guys that stand out are going to be Keon Coleman, Tank Dell, Jerome Ford. I think if you were playing in a non-PPR format, you really could just consider going ahead and taking the running back here. But in a full PPR league, I think I'd go with Tank Dell. Take the receiver that has had the volume and should be in the best offense. Going through and seeing if we would pivot anything else. No, really the only thing that you could potentially pivot from would maybe be here at running back going forward over Moss. But I love the Moss matchup this week, so I actually leave this as is, my friend. Now, Fro King Everest says, chat, are we dropping Caleb? I had to drop Caleb so I can play Geno this week. I literally just dropped Caleb off my team like yesterday. It sucks, but it is what it is. Now, if you're going to drop Caleb for another quarterback you're just going to put on the bench, I don't think you do. But if you need a quarterback to start this week, I would. Because the thing with Caleb is he still has the long-term upside. But this question coming out from Dylan. Always happy to see you, my guy. Going over to tight ends, this is an awkward situation. Kittle's out, so we're rolling with either Gesicki or Zach Ertz here. Let me pull up the injury reports that we have with these guys. Just make sure everything is good to go. I mean, if you are looking at Gesicki, I think that he is in a decent spot in just what should be a very high-scoring offense. Now, at the same time, I am expecting that we actually end up getting some more passing volume going in the direction of the receivers here, especially that T. Higgins is back in. It looks like he's still dealing with the calf strain. Will most likely play, but because it's the Monday night game, and Zach Ertz is in it anyway. If Gesicki plays, I'd probably go Mike Gesicki over Zach Ertz. But obviously, when we have Ertz, we have the pivot option regardless. And then for the flex here, you just have to go ahead and you have to play, honestly, either Malik Neighbors or Travis Etienne. I don't think you can consider Moss, even if we really like the matchup. I don't think you can consider Higgins, even if we really like the matchup. I think Etienne kind of gives you the baseline floor here. If you're looking at my flex rankings this week, I currently have Etienne at 30 and Neighbors at 32. If you're playing in a full PPR format, you probably go Neighbors. If you're playing in a half PPR or a non-PPR, probably go Etienne, because I do expect there to be more points scored in Jacksonville. Okay. Let's go over and check this team out for Jack. This is the Dustin and Jack attack. Y'all are going to get to see something special, all right? This is old school fantasy football, specifically old school, I believe. This has to be Dynasty. There's no way in hell we're playing MFL for redraft. Says, hey, Mason, been watching for 3 years now. Love the videos. Just looking to see how we can improve with the squad. Okay. So let's pull this up. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, this is MFL. This is what I exclusively played on from 2014 through 2020. Here, it's a platform in which this actually looks like it's not a dynasty. This looks like it is a redraft format. And if it's a redraft format, we got to get you off here, my guy. We got to get you on something else. And maybe you wanted it to be on MFL because you have the ability to go with the IDP player, but you can do that on other platforms now as well. But anyway, I'm not going to be able to say much when it comes to the IDP, when it comes to Fred Warner. The reality is, if you only start one individual defensive player anyway, it doesn't really matter. So my lack of knowledge there is not going to make a big difference. But going over and looking at quarterback, we are currently sitting with A-Rich, with Anthony Richardson. Don't need another quarterback. You do have a ton of rushing upside. Look like the quarterbacks that you had on the waiver wire were somewhat appealing. You have Tua on the waiver wire. Obviously, if this is a team that you have in IR, you can pick up Tua just for the long term. But if this team had an IR, I'd imagine somebody else would have did it anyway. But hell, is Jordan Love on the waiver wire? I definitely would pick up Jordan Love if we could, if I'm reading this correctly. Yeah, and if we're looking at the squad of how we could potentially pivot to Jordan Love, never mind, I don't see who we could cut. This team, unless we make a 2-for-1 deal. We'd have to make a 2-for-1 deal here. But anyway, going over to running back, we have the Mixon injury making things a little bit difficult. The Walker injury making things a little bit difficult. But we have Charbonnet to fill in for Walker. David Montgomery, a viable RB2 here regardless. So, I mean, running back, I would definitely prefer to have a few more depth pieces if possible. But as it stands right now, I mean, obviously, it's very difficult to make any adjustments in terms of what we have at the very bottom end of this team and dropping players to add anybody. Like we already saw that. I mean, I would love to potentially add, say, Jordan Love if possible, but most likely we're just kind of stuck as is. If we were wanting to make an adjustment here, running back, I think it would have to be through a trade, and we'd have to look to sell one of these receivers. Right now we have Collins, London, Puka, Rome, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy. So ultimately, if we're looking at wide receiver, we just have so much freaking value on the books right now. Now, the Puka Nacua injury is maybe capping the amount of moves that we can make right this second. But when we do get Puka back into this offense, I think it probably would be a situation in which you're incentivized to go ahead and at that point, especially if we have one of these other rookie wide receivers kind of coming on strong, potentially selling, say, Xavier Worthy and David Montgomery to go get that elite running back in the long term, or elite's probably a poor choice of words, but to go get a very strong running back option in the long term. And that way we can actually open up another raw spot to pick up a player that we like off the waiver wire. It looks like options on the waiver wire are going to be plentiful here. But really, I mean, it's a team that has so much high upside value at wide receiver in the long term. It's difficult to say that we want to be doing that right now until we get Puka back in. And then at tight end, we're sitting with Bowers. Bowers looks to be a top 5 tight end rest of season relatively easily. Chargers have one of the best defensive options this week going up against Pittsburgh. So ultimately, it's a super strong squad. Obviously, I'd like to make a waiver wire play here or two if we could, but our players are too good to cut. So really, it just comes down to potentially selling the wide receiver depth piece with Montgomery, opening up a raw spot that way with the 2-for-1 deal, especially as we get closer to potentially getting Puka Nacua back in, my friend. But thank you again. Really hope that I was able to help you out here a bit. Hope you're able to get something from this, my friend. But let's move this over. And we are going to have to resend this link. And please, if you have any questions that you want answered for free, just go ahead and drop them in the live chats. And I'll be happy to get to them. Okay, so let's move this. Leadfoot says, drop Moore for Shaheed. If this is DJ Moore, for the love of God, please do not do that. If this is DJ Moore, you definitely want to have DJ Moore over Shaheed. Bluke says, start Warren or Samaje Perine. I'd start Jalen Warren until we see what the role looks like for Perine. Mitch says, David Montgomery or Zach Moss in a full PPR format. More likely than not, I'm just going to go ahead. I will take Zach Moss here in what should be a really good matchup, while at the same time, you're in a situation in which Moss is going to have the vast majority of the work in his own backfield, where Montgomery obviously will be losing the vast majority of the high value touches to Jahmyr Gibbs. Jenny says, how much is a full team review? I would highly recommend just doing it through Underdog. That way it's only $10. If you are an annual member of flockfantasy.com, Mother Flocker, and use promo code FLOCK, you can get a free team review that way as well. If you are a subscriber of flockfantasy.com, team reviews are 33% off. But yeah, so. And then start sit questions are like $5. Trade questions are like $5. So definitely recommend just taking advantage of one of the promos. It's a lot cheaper to do the $10 thing than the buying it on the site. But if I have team reviews for $10 on the site, then at that point, I'm going to have to be live streaming for 24 hours a day. Or I'm not going to be able to give good answers with team reviews. CEO says, how long after submitting a team review does it take for you to review it? Typically same day, worst case scenario, the next day. Jay says, with Mixon being out, should I start Javonte Williams? I don't know who your other options are. I'd say Javonte's probably not an exciting play. I mean, if I'm looking at Javonte Williams myself, this running back that I have on the bench in the Flock League, instead of playing him this week, I actually went out there and traded for Cam Akers. I gave up the player at the bottom end of my bench in Tyler Algier, who I just picked up off the waiver wire this week, and $11 fab to go out there and get Cam Akers so I could play him over Javonte Williams. And also play him over like Jalen Waddle and Terry McLaurin. Okay. Hank Hill says, great content, man. Help me win quite a few matchups. Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Noob Guy says, Shaheed or Higgins for the flex? I'm an idiot, so I'd take T. Higgins. I'm an idiot, so I'll take T. Higgins. Okay. So let's move. Sheeting says, Denver's going to lose a lot this year. Knicks actually ain't a bad QB, though. Bo Nix has not looked good. I can put it that way. Obviously, it was a very tough matchup this past week. But Bo Nix right now, and of course, there's no way in hell that we can sit here and say that a quarterback is good or bad based off their first 2 NFL starts. But you cannot make an argument that Bo Nix is playing good football right now. We're looking at 77 pass attempts, 384 passing yards. Like, there's some running backs that will give you 384 rushing yards off of 77 carries. Very inefficient. And then you go over to see it's 5 yards per attempt. See 0 passing touchdowns to 4 interceptions. Like, not a great situation. Not a great situation. Okay. I know he's a rookie, but rookies can be bad. You know. We can't go, yeah, he's playing horrible. He's a horrible quarterback right now, but he's a rookie, so that means he's good. No. If I'm submitting my starting lineup in week 3 and the guy's playing horrible quarterback, I can't call up Sleeper and say, hey, yeah, I know y'all only gave me 2.4 points for Javonte Williams, but remember, actually, Bo Nix is a rookie. So y'all are going to have to actually bump that up for me here. So. Let's see. H. Daniels says, Henry or CMC rest of season? Full PBR format, I'd rather McCaffrey. Obviously, if you're 0-2 and you're just desperate for points right now, then maybe that is a little bit different. 44 MSU says, who's your offensive rookie of the year? At this point, it looks like it's going to be one of the receivers. At this point, it looks like it's either Neighbors or Harrison. Let's look at the odds right now. What are the odds for offensive rookie of the year? Okay. I'm assuming that these are updated here. Yeah, these are definitely updated because you have the Caleb odds so low. Right now, you are currently sitting 3-1 with Daniels, about 3-1 with Harrison, 4-1 with Caleb, 7-1 with Neighbors, 15-1 with Bowers, 20-1 with Worthy, 30-1 with Thomas, 43-1 with Nix, 45-1 with Ladd, 50-1 with May. Let's see, what else can we sort by? Let's go AFC North Division winner. Who are they expecting? So Browns pretty much have no shot. It's pretty much even between Cincinnati, Baltimore, which is funny because they're both the 0-2 teams. Archie says, trade J.K. Dobbins for Rashad White. If I'm playing in a full PPR format, yes. J.K. Dobbins looks like a much better running back than Rashad White right now. But with that being said, if it's a full PPR format, you have a massive role as a receiver for White, or at least a role as a receiver for White, whereas J.K. Dobbins has 4 receiving yards this year. But let's move this over and let's get to some more of these questions. And of course, like I said, if y'all wanted to ask a start sit question, trade question, roster review, it's all through flockfantasy.com. You can find the link in the description. But definitely the best way or the cheapest way to get a roster review is taking advantage of the offer that we have with Underdog Fantasy, where if you use promo code FLOCK and make a $10 deposit minimum, you will get a free team review in one of these live streams through flockfantasy.com. Plus, code FLOCK on Underdog will get you that CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half a total yard. It will actually give you a ton of different promos right now. And on top of this, you will get a Patrick Mahomes free pick, more than less than half a total yard for the Sunday night game, a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000, and that free team review on the site. So definitely make sure you take advantage of that. But let's go over and look at this team for snubs. Says, looking to upgrade from Kyron. JT owner lost Pacheco. Is this too much? I also have Aaron Jones. Okay, so Kyron Najee versus Jonathan Taylor. I think, honestly, this is maybe a little bit too much here, especially with these league settings. I would try to squeeze out a little more juice from Kyron. I mean, obviously, I'm very concerned about Kyron. I actually don't mind pivoting off of Kyron to Taylor. I just imagine you're not having to pay Najee Harris on top of it. Without Kyron is one of the very few running backs in the NFL right now, seeing that 90% opportunity share. Okay. But let me move this over to our next question. This is a start-sit question from PC Pablamo. It says, unsure who to start as my wide receiver 3. It's a 3 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So right now we have Juwan Jennings in there. So it looks like Jordan Love may end up playing. And if that's the case, we want Jaden Reed. Now, if Jordan Love does miss, then we'll go ahead and we'll take Juwan Jennings. But if Love plays, we want Reed. And then for the flex, yeah, we keep Aaron Jones. Okay. So let's move this over to our next trade question. This one coming out from Jindies. It's a 12-team super flex, PPR tight end premium triple flex. Would leave me with Burrow and Tua, and I'll have 3 2025 first. So it looks like it's a spot where we are building for the long term. Mason to Kyron Williams, upgrade. Downs to Olave, upgrade. The second to the first upgrade, we're downgrading from Hertz to May. So let's just think about this from a raw value perspective. If we're selling Jalen Hurts, I want the equivalent of about 3 to 4 first-round picks. Is Drake May worth a first-round pick in a Superflex Dynasty League right now? I would make the argument yes. Is Kyron Williams worth a first-round pick? Dependent on your league. Is Chris Olave? Dependent on your league. But you're getting the additional 2025 early to mid-first on top of it. So if you are a full-blown rebuild, I think this is an okay price if it's your only way to accumulate these future assets. But of course, as soon as we make this deal, we would want to turn around and sell Kyron and see if we can get that first rounder. But really, that's the only way that we are wanting to do it, is if you have faith in your ability to flip the veterans. Now let's go over and check this team out for Slavic 19. This is Team Vista here. It says, if allowed, start Higgins or Worthy. If Higgins is good to go Monday night, which it looks like he will be, I'm actually going to go ahead. I will take T. Higgins over Xavier Worthy. Just going to be a phenomenal matchup where I actually do think that Cincinnati comes out and plays extremely well. Now, going over to the league analyzer, this is currently a 10-team start 2 wide receiver, 1 flex format. So the wide receiver depth simply is not going to matter too much here. Looking at the league analyzer, we are at the very top. We have the second best team in this league. So obviously a situation in which, we don't necessarily need to come out and need to panic by any means. Like, we are extremely strong. Pulling this up, quarterback, we have A-Rich. When we have A-Rich, we can start him every week based off rushing upside. The main thing that I would be a little bit hesitant about is just us sitting here with, say, the downside if Richardson were to miss time, whether that's him continuing to play extremely poorly, whether that's an injury given his playing style. So I wouldn't mind you rostering 2 quarterbacks. And in terms of what we have at wide receiver, I think there's an easy way for us to do this that I know you probably won't want to hear. But going over to running back, we have Breece, McCaffrey, Rachaad White, Najee, Trey Benson. So an extremely strong running back room, right? Especially in the long term when we get McCaffrey back in, there is no way that anybody can compete with this team. In the short term, it may be a very difficult situation. Without McCaffrey, it's honestly not going to be. We have more than enough depth to get by. We can play Rachaad White at RB2. And when you have Breece RB1, who cares, to be honest. Going over to receiver, we have London and Higgins that we can start every single week. We have Kupp for the long term. And we have Worthy, JSN as quality depth pieces. We have Ladd McConkey as a high upside long-term piece. Honestly, my thing is, if this was a multiple flex league, yeah, based off what we've seen with Allen Lazard through the first few weeks, I think you could definitely roster Allen Lazard and see a path for him to actually get into your starting lineup. But specifically here, I don't necessarily know if that is going to be possible in that 10-team league with only 2 wide receivers and 1 flex spot, because you are sitting with just such a strong team overall. So if you wanted to potentially move on from Lazard and just pick up that backup quarterback, definitely think you can when we're rostering this many receivers. Going over to tight ends, we are nuts. We have Bowers and Kittle. Once Kittle's back fully healthy, I think if you wanted to sell one of these tight ends and London and pivot over to a true elite level wide receiver, I definitely think you can do just that. But I mean, this is a crazy team. Like, what does the team at number 1 look like? Allen, Barkley, Mixon, Etienne, Wilson, Ayuk, McBride. I mean, they have a very strong team as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for anybody to kind of compete with you here. And the main thing is, once we get Kittle back in, trying to squeeze some value out of one of these tight ends in that 2-for-1 deal. Potentially rostering a second quarterback here by moving on from Lazard, picking up another QB off the waiver wire. But this is a great team where I really don't think that there is much that you need to be doing outside of just staying patient, waiting until we get McCaffrey back, waiting until we get Kupp back. And then obviously once you have those players back in, then the depth pieces become even more appealing to package up as 2-for-1 options. But really do appreciate you and wish I had more. It looks like whoever the rookie here is, the teams at the top just robbed him of all his good players because, yeah, he is sitting with nothing. But let's move this over to BG. This is a trade question where we're sending Waddle and Dobbins for Garrett Wilson. So if Tua was fully healthy, I think that this would be a very difficult question to answer. If Tua was fully healthy, I think based off the pop that we've seen with Dobbins and how much value I've seen him have in these live streams, I think you make a strong argument for Dobbins. However, Waddle's not, at least in my mind, I don't want to say playable, but he's not an exciting start with no Tua. So what I would actually be looking at is, I don't know, we're selling kind of a bench receiver here with a depth running back we picked up off the waiver wire at the very end of our draft, and tearing up in a shallow format to Garrett Wilson around one pay. I think we just go ahead and we take Garrett Wilson. If Tua was fully healthy, different story, but I don't think Waddle's startable right now. I hope I'm wrong. I have Waddle on my team. I just don't have that much faith in it. Now, the Punk Vato, this is a trade where we're sending JSN. We're sending Zach Moss and we're getting JSN in return. I think that Zach Moss will be much better going into the future than what he has been. But based off the pop that we've had with Jackson Smith and Jigba, and also the confirmation that this Bears offense has actually been really bad, and it seems like a lot of people are just blaming this on the offensive coordinator in Chicago and blaming JSN's struggles his rookie season on that same offensive coordinator that was in here. So a lot of people are saying coming into the season, it seems like it's playing out to be true. Jackson Smith and Jigba looks like he's just absolutely crushing it. Now, let's go over to our next review. This is a free Saquon team says, "Hey Mason, longtime viewer, Sahil from the live chat. Hell yes, my friend. Thank you for making your way over to the site. Says, one, what do you think about the league format for an 8-team league? Any trade suggestions? Wanting to upgrade at running back? Not selling Zamir. I don't care. 3 who has the best team. Me or Saquon RB1. And then trying to sell Fields this week before Love returns." So it does look like this is a league where, while yes, there are only 8 teams, we are starting a ton of players. Also, it's a league where we can get multiple quarterbacks in this lineup. So quarterback depth does matter a bit here as well. So this is what I would recommend for anybody to do in terms of if you have an 8-team league. If you have an 8-team league, what you need to do is you need to go out there and you need to just make it the deepest format you possibly can. Start 13 guys every single week. Because if you think about it, if you're starting 13 players from week to week perspective in an 8-team league, that's 104 guys. That's about equivalent of, say, let's do some quick math real quick. A 12-team format with 2 flex spots. So I actually really do like the setup. If we're looking at the league analyzer, really all those teams besides the bottom 2 do look very similar. Looking at the top 2 squads, looking at these 2 teams that you were asking about for the time being, let's just rank quarterback room to quarterback room, running back room to running back room. Quarterback room, we have Jalen Hertz, Jordan Love, Baker Mayfield, Justin Fields. So our QB1 versus their QB1, give me mine. Give me Hertz. Our QB2 versus their QB2, give me Jordan Love. Their QB3 versus our QB3, give me Baker Mayfield's. And then who cares about the QB4 here in this situation? So I think our quarterback room is the better one between the 2. Running back, we have Cook, Walker, Brooks as our top 3 names. They have Barkley, HN, Swift. They're crushing us at running back. Wide receiver, we have St. Brown, Chase, Neighbors, JSN. They have Nico, Rice, Puka, Flowers. We're crushing them at wide receiver. Tight end, we have Kincaid and Likely. They have Laporta and Ferguson. I think they have the tight end edge. So I'd give us the edge at quarterback, us the edge at wide receiver. I'd give them the edge at running back, them the edge at tight ends. You go over and you look at what the league analyzer is saying here as well. They have us pretty much identical with overall values. So honestly, I think it is just gonna have to be a let's wait and let's see how this plays out situation. I don't necessarily know if we can say like, oh, okay, this team's for sure the better between the 2. Now, going over and looking at what we have at quarterback, we have Love, Hertz, Baker, Jalen Hurts, top 8 quarterback. Jordan Love, top 16 quarterback. Baker Mayfield, top 24 quarterback. So honestly, we are sitting pretty here at QB. I know you're saying that you were wanting to sell Fields. Even in this league where we can start multiple QBs, I don't necessarily think that you're going to get much for Fields. You can definitely try, but I wouldn't have my hopes up too high. Now going over to running back, we have James Cook, Kenneth Walker, Jonathan Brooks, Zach Charbonnet, Isaiah Pacheco, Eckler, Zamir, Akers, Deonta Foreman, and Samaje Perine. So I'm going to be completely honest with you here. I have never played in an 8-team league where we start 13 guys. This just looks so different than the regular fantasy football team that it is almost difficult to come out here and say anything about this running back room. Now, do I think that this is is James Cook a top 8 running back? Maybe. If he is, he's a low-end RB1 in this format. Do I think Kenneth Walker's a top 16 RB? Probably, but I don't think he's top 8 guy. We don't have a running back 1 here, even when Brooks is back. The Pacheco injury really does hurt us. I think running back is our weakest position here. Receiver, we have the anchors at the top with St. Brown, Chase, Neighbors. We have the quality depth pieces with JSN, Shakir, Watson. I feel very bad because I just legitimately do not know how to advise us to make moves given these league settings, given this roster. I just can't imagine what the tendencies of your league mates are. I really wish we had more specific questions like the previous ones that we answered earlier, right? But tight end, we have Kincaid likely. Excited about the tight end position. I think Parkinson's even viable with the Puka and Cup injuries. I think it's a strong team at quarterback and wide receiver. Obviously, the weak spot is our running back, but honestly, I don't even know if you have to go out there and address the running back position at the top end when we have the depth throughout and it's a league where we can start so many guys. So I'm sorry, my friend. I wish I had more for you, but it's just such an awkward spot where it's very difficult for me to say that I have any type of experience in this league. But I really do appreciate you sticking with me for so long. And yeah, in comparison to your team versus the team below, I mean, the league analyzer has us as a slight edge, but honestly, it is pretty much neck and neck. But I like what we are doing for the format since it's an 18 league. If it's an 18 league, you got to make it interesting somehow. Now, going over to what we have here, this is Henry Spencer's team. This team name is Kyler the Creator. Says, hey, Mason, would love to get your thoughts on the team and a couple trade ideas and targets. So this is a league where we can start we can start 4 receivers from a week-to-week perspective, 12-team format. So the depth's going to matter a little bit here. We are currently neck and neck with this other team, Olave Garden, pretty funny name. I like the team names in this league. Let's run through these. Olave Garden, Kyler the Creator, the Home Depot, Daddy's Dimes, Clack Attack, Paul Walker's, Flower Power, 2.5 Zacks, Ridley's Casino. Like, this seems like a very PG, good set of team names. If you want to let your league know, I definitely approve on the team names here. But anyway, pulling this up. Quarterback, we have Kyler, obviously chilling. If Tua is on the IR for us and he's IR eligible, we have that slot. And then honestly, don't necessarily need to be making any adjustments. However, with that being said, if you're in a situation in which, say, I don't know, we don't have an IR slot for Tua, then at that point, you just go ahead and let him go. I think you are good to just roster Kyler rest of season. But obviously, very strong team. We're not necessarily having to do much here. Now, going over to running back, we are sitting with Brees as the anchor at the top. We have James Conner as a very solid RB2. Now I'm a little bit concerned in that I think that you could potentially be in a situation where James Conner is a little bit of a ticking time bomb, where you may have Trey Benson expanding his role later in the season. Obviously, you always kind of have to be a little bit concerned that you may see an injury for James Conner as well. But Jordan Mason, an extremely strong play in the short term. We have Ford, we have Eckler, we have Spears. Because this is a league where you are able to start 4 receivers from week to week perspective, I think the wide receiver depth matters. If this was a league where you're going to start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, I actually think it would be a very interesting spot to go ahead and see if we can pivot off of James Conner and go and sell for a long-term upgrade, just simply because we may not necessarily need the depth. But honestly, no, I mean, this is a situation in which we're perfectly optimized for this format. Then going over to what we have with the wide receiver position, we have Harrison as the elite piece at the very top. We have Adams, Higgins, Waddle, Tyler Johnson. So, I mean, if we were to potentially do anything here, it's just that the Tua and Waddle injury does negatively impact us in a big time way, having both of these guys on our squad. So if you wanted to potentially diversify just a bit by maybe going through and seeing if we could get an upgrade over Jalen Waddle, like if we can target a team that's desperate at running back and send them Ford and Waddle to go get that upgrade in the short term, preferably somebody who's similar in the long term, that could be something that we look to do, to look at some of these teams that are weakest at running back. This team only has Achane and Pollard. Like this team, I have no idea what the hell they're doing. If we could send them Jerome Ford and Jalen Waddle to pivot over to DJ Moore, Devonta Smith, I think that would be very interesting. This team only has Taylor, Aaron Jones, Blake Corum. This team could definitely use Jerome Ford as well. If you could send them Jerome Ford and Jalen Waddle, you know what? We're not going to get to Wilson that way. Honestly, it'd probably have to be like an Adams and Ford move to get to Garrett Wilson. Moving over and looking at this team has Jacobs, Walker, Jalen Warren. I think they could potentially use Jerome Ford. If we were to sell them Ford, it would be like Ford and Harrison for Amon-Ra St. Brown, if possible. This team has the Pacheco injury. This team 100% could use Jerome Ford as well. If we could potentially send them Ford and like Waddle and get to Brandon Ayuk, I think that would be a no-brainer. But yeah, really, I think that's like the only move that you can make. Obviously, it's a phenomenal squad here where you are sitting at the top of the league analyzer. We have a very well-balanced team in general, but just when we were so strong with the running back at the very top, particularly the short-term production, I think somebody like Jerome Ford's not going to hit our starting lineup or even come close to it, whereas a couple other teams in this league could potentially use that production. So I think maybe making that pivot to go get that long-term wide receiver upgrade could make some sense here, my friend. But thank you again, and really hope I was able to help you out. But yeah, I also do really like all the team names in this league. But King was taken coming out. It's a start-sit question. We're at running back, we're looking at Josh Jacobs or Zach Charbonnet. We have to go Jacobs, especially as it seems like there's a chance that Jordan Love's good to go. Quarterback, you have to go Baker over Purdy now that Kittle's ruled out. And running back, honestly, I think it's kind of an easy spot to say now that Kenneth Walker's fully ruled out as well, that you have to take Zach Charbonnet. We want both of the 3-down backs. We want Baker, who's just been absolutely killing it, over Brock Purdy, who obviously is dealing with his own injury situations, specifically in San Fran. But let's move this over to another team review. This one, not so much as a PG name, but I will say they definitely have an extremely strong team. This is Hall Pass, and to your ass, says, just got Barkley for Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery. Well, my friend, this is why this team looks so damn strong according to the league analyzer. And this is a league where we're going to start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex as well. So this is a league where the depth doesn't matter that much, and we are for sure incentivized to go and make 2-for-1 deals where we can. And pulling this up, yeah, this is nasty. This is a nasty, nasty team. So quarterback, we are currently sitting with Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, cornerstone piece, don't have to be rostering a backup. You're playing him every single week regardless. I actually think he'll be in a better situation with no Pacheco, and that we may see this team be a little bit more pass happy and push the aggression a little bit more. Going over to what we have at running back, we are currently sitting with Breece Hall, Saquon Barkley, Nick Chubb, Chase Brown, Rico Dowdle, and Deonta Foreman. So this is why we are by far and away the best team with this league analyzer. We have 2 of the top 3 RBs, 2 of the absolute anchors. We have Breece Hall and Saquon Barkley. Like, RIP the rest of your league mates. I mean, Chubb's like the perfect RB3 to have because obviously we're not needing a running back anytime soon. I do believe the Barkley bye week's week 5, but honestly, we could potentially just pick up somebody that week anyway if Chubb isn't back by then. But honestly, it's a phenomenal team at running back, specifically because what we have at the top. Since it's a 2 wide receiver, 1 flex league, the wide receiver depth doesn't matter too much here, but it's not like we've loaded up with too much wide receiver depth. We have Nico and Rice, 2 wide receiver 1s. We have Jackson Smith and Jigba, who at this point is just absolutely crushing in Seattle. We have Jaden Reed. We have Keon Coleman. We have Jalen Tolbert. If we do end up seeing the target volume go away from Jalen Tolbert now that Jake Ferguson's back in this offense, I think Jalen Tolbert would be the guy that I'd be quick to move on from with this team in particular. But I mean, overall, this is a situation in which we don't necessarily need to worry too much about receiver because we have the options at the top, and it's not like we're rostering too many depth pieces here. And the depth pieces that we have optimized for upside with these guys like Jaden Reed and Keon Coleman. Going over to tight ends, I personally am still of the belief that if you have Dalton Kincaid, you don't need to be rostering another tight end, especially if that other tight end, Zach Ertz. Like, I don't know what world we ever play Zach Ertz here over Kincaid. So I would actually probably just go ahead, cut Zach Ertz, pick up another running back off the waiver wire, see if we can potentially find, say, the next guy that looks like a Zach Charbonnet that could potentially fill in for an injury if you were to get somebody. I just don't necessarily see why we would have Zach Ertz. Like, if you look at the underlying usage specifically for what you've had for Kincaid with the snaps and route run participation, it's a tight end that's still pretty much an every down player for the Buffalo Bills as far as tight ends come. Yeah, of course, the snaps were down a little bit last week, but that was because he got taken out for concussion. He's fully good to go. The passing volume is going to be there in Buffalo going into the future. So I would just go ahead and move on from Ertz, pick up another running back off waivers. But honestly, it's an extremely strong team. It's by far and away the best team in the league. Your league mates should not have given you Saquon Barkley to pair up with Breece Hall. Feel bad for the rest of the squad. Rest of the teams in this league. And I don't really see how they have a path to do much. But thank you again. I really do appreciate you and really hope that I was able to help you out in some way with this. But let's move this over and let's get to some free questions in the live chat here if we can. And let's go back over. Dio says, who's more likely to come back, McCaffrey or Puka? I would definitely say McCaffrey. Obviously, we're just guessing. I would kind of assume that both of these players will be coming back. But my thing in terms of McCaffrey versus Puka is if you are looking at these teams, the Rams are currently 0-2, and they are dealing with so many injuries at this point that you're not going to be surprised if the Rams fall to 0-4. They fall to 1-3. They fall to 1-4. And if that does happen, what is the incentive structure for them to go ahead and for them to bring Puka back? Whereas I know the Niners are trailing off as well, but you look at the Niners this week, they're like touchdown favorites over the Rams. The Niners are most likely winning this game. I think the Niners will have a better shot to win games over the next few weeks. And I think the Niners are still Super Bowl contenders once they get everybody back in. So I think that they are highly incentivized to get CMC back into this offense. Jab says Higgins or Justin Fields. If you have a super flex spot, I would just go ahead and not play Justin Fields. I don't like the matchup going up against the Chargers. I mean, it should be a situation in which, I mean, it's a low-scoring game in general, and obviously Fields hasn't really had much passing volume at all. Okay. Now, Ledex says flex Jameson or Zamir. If it's a full PPR format, I think we go ahead. I think that we take Jameson. Non-PPR leagues, Zamir is in a really good matchup going up against the Carolina Panthers. But ultimately, the full PPR league, Zamir is just not going to catch the ball. Okay. So let's move this. Jam says, should I trade DK for Jameson or Zay? Or should I just keep DK? I would for sure rather have DK Metcalf over Jameson rest of season. DK Metcalf versus Zay Flowers kind of is going to be up to you. I wouldn't fault you one way or another. Okay. Brody says DJ Moore and Jake Ferguson for Kelsey and Higgins. I would prefer Travis Kelsey and T. Higgins. I didn't really draft much Kelsey this year just because I was all in on Laporta. Let me flex on y'all for all my Sam Laporta. It's working out great. But I do think that Kelsey's going to be better going into the future. I do think that the passing volume will be much better in KC than what it's been like through the first two. Heavy says, I got Akers top 5 in my model this week. Love to hear that, my friend. I don't know what model this is. I don't know what relevance it has. But your boy just picked up Akers. Traded Tyler Algier, who I picked up off the waiver wire this week. And some fab dollars to Danny, who he picked up Akers as a free agent. Didn't have to spend any fab dollars on him, obviously, before Mixon gets injured. But yeah, I think Akers is a strong play this week with no Dameon Pierce and with no Joe Mixon. And what should be a good offense. So, yeah, I'm for sure in on Akers. Okay. Tresner lists 3 players that are not close. For the only guy I'm overweight on here is Higgins. Tresner just continuing to be the clown that hangs out in the live chat for 3 to 4 hours every single day, trying to do as much as he can to get attention. There's your attention, my friend. You can spread lies and try to make us look bad off of just completely false stuff. But Susboy says, how to get the team rated on the Flock website. So if you wanted to get it graded for free, like with the league analyzer that you see, all you have to do is link it with a My Teams page, and then you can pull down the expert rankings. It'll just go through and it'll give you the power standings in your league. If you wanted to get it reviewed on the live stream, or if you wanted to ask a start sit question, a trade question, you can hit that comment box in the top right corner. And if you go ahead and if you do that, then at that point, it'll just prompt you. Definitely, if you wanted to get it for free, make sure you have that free team review voucher if you signed up to Underdog with code FLOCK. And you just need to make sure that you have the same email address set up on flockfantasy.com as you had on Underdog. K-Ton says, James Conner for Devontae Adams in a full PPR format. I probably prefer Adams rest of season just because I am a little bit worried about the injury history that we've had with James Conner, plus the possibility that you're going to be in a good situation in which, the situation in which Trey Benson expands his role later in the year, which I hope does not happen because I have James Conner, of course. But let's move this over and let's get back to questions on the site. And of course, like I said, you can ask any start sit question, any trade question, anything you want over there on flockfantasy.com. Definitely the cheapest way to get a free team review. And what I would recommend to get that team review is taking advantage of the promo that we have over on Underdog Fantasy with a link in the live chat, the link in the description, link in the comment section. If you use promo code FLOCK, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, with promo code FLOCK, you are also going to be getting a Patrick Mahomes free pick, more than less than half a total yard. And Underdog also has a site-wide CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday. So you'll be getting both of those, which, like I said, you can find that link in the live chat and the description. But let's go ahead and let's move this over. We already answered this question for snubs, but honestly, the gap between Kyron and Taylor, for me, I like pivoting over to Taylor. I just don't think you have to add in Najee Harris. But will that update now? Perfect. Now going over to this question from Huddy. Says, hey Mason, love the content in a full rebuild, and I was recently offered this deal. So honestly, the third versus Demario Douglas does not matter at all here. It's just, would you prefer Bijan Robinson or would you prefer Jamar Chase? Honestly, I think that Bijan just has more dynasty value straight up at this point. I don't mind selling the running back on a rebuilding squad, but I think you need more if you are going to be selling Bijan. Now, Tyreek's chance or something coming out with this trade question. Here we are giving up Montgomery, Pitts, Hunt, and we are getting in return Pickens, Metcalf, and Bucky. So from Hunt to Bucky Irving, kind of lateral move, not going to be a big deal either way. From Montgomery to George Pickens, kind of a lateral move up to what your team needs. From Pitts to DK Metcalf, kind of lateral move up to what your team needs. Can we see? Okay, our team has Brock Bowers. So if we have Brock Bowers where Kyle Pitts is just sitting on our bench, I don't mind us going for the Metcalf, Pickens, and Bucky side. Assuming that we have Bowers, of course. Now, Zinn coming out with a start sit question. Says, Mason, looking for some help here. Mixon and Pacheco banged up. Flex is in question. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's check this out. We have London, Worthy, Thomas, Steele, Johnston, Pacheco, Mixon, and Braylon Allen. So obviously the last three options are not in play for us. So really, it's just going to come down between London, Xavier Worthy, Carson Steele. I actually think you really just have to go ahead and take Drake London there. I mean, obviously, this Atlanta Falcons passing offense hasn't looked great really outside of a single drive. And in that single drive where you actually had Cousins finally putting it together, you did have the London receiving touchdown to cap it off. London still is getting the majority of the volume in this offense. So yeah, I think you do have to go ahead and you have to take London over Worthy. Okay. So now Steven coming out with a start set here. Says, also got offered Kincaid for JSN. Do I accept or do I stick with my tight ends? So tight end right now we have Njoku and Likely. I would probably rather have Kincaid over JSN rest of season. But it's a double flex format, so it does make it a little bit tougher. I think this week, for sure, you're going to go out, you're going to take Charbonnet. Obviously, that's kind of just going to be the case this week. Whereas long-term, we are going to be getting Kenneth Walker back in. So all of a sudden, Charbonnet's no longer a viable play for us. And the flex, we are more likely than not looking at T. Higgins. For us to trade JSN for Kincaid, I think what you're going to need to do is see if we can throw out Njoku and Likely on the trade block right now and see if we could pivot off of one of those tight ends to get an upgrade elsewhere at receiver if we are going to make that trade for Kincaid. Now let's go over to this trade question. This one coming out from, this start sit from Jeremiah. Here at running back, I think you just have to go ahead. You have to play Kyren Williams. Don't like the matchup. Don't like the overall game environment with how good this Rams defense is. With this Niners defense is and how bad the Rams offense is, but you are going to get 90% of the opportunities. And you'll also get 90% of the opportunities in Seattle for Zach Charbonnet. Honestly, I think you just have to take both of the feature down backs in comparison to both of the committee backs this week. Now, JBLD coming out. This is another start set question where here, wide receiver, if we wanted to get anybody into the starting lineup, it would be Jalen Waddle if Jordan Love's out. But if Jordan Love does play, it would be Jaden Reed. But definitely can't start either over Jefferson or London. Can't start him over Diggs. Running back, I guess maybe Spears would be the guy that we would look to get in, but definitely can't start either one of them. So really it's just going to come down to what we're doing in the flex. If Jordan Love does play, we go Jaden Reed. If Jordan Love doesn't play, we go Jalen Waddle. So, if Jordan Love doesn't play, both passing offenses are going to have no volume, but I think Waddle's the better player in that instance. Now, Darkwing says, I have so many potential star players this week. Brian Robinson has the only bad matchup. Needs some help. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's pull this up. So if we were looking at our wide receiver 2 slot, I think here between DJ Moore, T. Higgins, it's somewhat close. I think you have a really good matchup for Higgins, but I'm actually going to go ahead and take Moore. Given the fact that you have no Keenan Allen here, I think it just can push you over the edge and give us the safety where we can see it from Higgins before we actually have to start him. And then for running back, I would actually go Charbonnet over Montgomery as well. I would go Sharp over Montgomery. Charbonnet should just have a massive workload. And yeah, I think we stick with Baker there over Purdy. But we already answered this for Jeremiah. So let's answer some of the free questions in the live chat league. Please let me know if you have any questions in the chat. Flo says, the Flock League looks fun. I wonder what the last place has to do. So I don't know if you saw the draft week that we all had with each other earlier, but we had the week. So we're going to have a Flock draft week every week going into the future, where like we have a bunch of videos that we all record for YouTube, blah, blah, blah. The loser of the league is going to have to wear a t-shirt that the winner gets to create. So like what I've said is if I win the league, I'm literally going to take a very funny nude photo of myself, obviously with blurs. And whoever loses is going to have to wear it for every single video. Whoever loses has to wear it for not only on my channel, but on every single channel. And then of course I'll have some funny text making something very personal to make fun of the person. So it's something that I cannot afford to lose, and I very much need to win. Okay. Let's see. Reese says, when is a good week to trade Jordan Mason to get his value high? Is it this week? Is it next week? It is very tough to figure out. I believe McCaffrey is eligible to return in week 6, right? Because he was not on the IR in week 4. He is, I believe, so he's going to be missing week 2, 3, 4, 5 on the IR. So he's eligible to return week 6. But the thing is, we have no idea when he will return. And it's not like just right when he returns, that's when Jordan Mason's value tanks. Jordan Mason's value will tank the second that we hear McCaffrey's returning. So it doesn't matter if he's returning in week 6. If we hear in week 5, hey, just to let y'all know McCaffrey's going to be good to go next week, then Jordan Mason's value gets cut in half. So it is a very tough situation. It is very tough to figure out. It's kind of like a ticking time bomb, but you're just getting so much value out of it. Where what I would personally say is, if Jordan Mason, if you are loaded and you haven't dealt with any injuries whatsoever, and you're currently in a situation in which Jordan Mason's a flex play for you, but if you were to pivot to a different running back, it wouldn't be that bad. Like, oh, I also have Rachaad White on my bench. If that's the case, I would look to just sell Jordan Mason in a 2-for-1 deal and see if we can go get a stud upgrade at wide receiver. However, if you have Mason and then the next available player for you down there on the bench is just garbage, where you're saying, if I move on from Jordan Mason, at that point, I'm having to go and play Devin Singletary, then I have no interest in trading away Jordan Mason. It doesn't matter what the situation is. We kind of need to have him in our lineup at that point. So it's very dependent on your exact team. It's hard to know exactly when it's going to be, quote unquote, too late to move on from him. But personally, I'm kind of sitting here saying, well, yeah, it depends. Do you need him? Do you need him? Teresa says Zamir or Swift. Both running backs have phenomenal matchups. Obviously, Zamir going up against a JV football team. DeAndre Swift going up against the Colts. The Colts are at the very top of the NFL in total rushing yards allowed so far this season. So I do think it's a toughish situation to know which way to go. If you're looking at my flex rankings this week, I mean, we can even just pull up my rankings on the site this week. Let's go ahead and let's do that. Because I am actually starting DeAndre Swift in the Flock League, to be honest. I have Swift, I believe, as my RB. Actually, I have him there as my flex spot. What's funny is I have a 0 RB team, and I'm currently starting 4 running backs this week and 2 receivers. But yeah, let's go ahead. These are our week 3 running back rankings. Right now, I have Swift RB25, Zamir RB28. I I stand by that if it's a full PPR format. Non-PPR league, then obviously maybe it's a little bit tougher. Okay. Let's move this over. Chris says Pickens or Akers for the flex. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Cam Akers relatively easily. I know people are going to be upset saying, oh, Mason, George Pickens was so close to having a big game, blah, blah, blah. The thing is just the passing volume is not there in Pittsburgh. You can go ahead. You can look at the projections that you have on Underdog. You have Justin Fields, higher, lower, 160.5 passing yards. I mean, you look at George Pickens. If I can type. George Pickens, higher, lower, 47.5 receiving yards. Whereas if you look at Cam Akers, who presumably should be a 3-down back right now in Houston, higher, lower is 72.5 total yards. Like, I go Cam Akers over George Pickens. Runick says Amari Cooper or Jordan Whittington. Amari Cooper easily. Easily. Raphael says, Mason, would we rather win Best Ball Mania or win the Flock League? Let's be real here. What kind of clown would I be if I said I'd rather win Best Ball Mania over the Flock League? Clearly, it's the Flock League. Come on. Come on, my guy. Would I rather win the glory of the Flock League, or would I rather win the millions on Underdog? You choose glory every time. Glory any day of the week. But let's move this over and let's get back to the questions that we have on the site. And of course, if you want to submit any questions on the site, you can on flockfantasy.com. Links in the description, comment section, live chat. To Underdog Fantasy, which what you're looking at right now is Underdog. If you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog, you will get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, on top of that, you will get a free team review on flockfantasy.com for me to review one of your teams and make suggestions during one of these live streams. And on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, you will get, I believe, a Patrick Mahomes special pick, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday, and a CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half a total yard for Sunday as well. You can find that link in the description. Well, let's move this over. Our next question is going to be a start sit from Trevor. Much love, my guy. Here, wide receiver, we are currently sitting with Smith and Nico. If we wanted to start any of these receivers, Higgins would be my favorite option, but definitely not playing Higgins over these guys. Running back, we are in a great spot. If we want to start anybody, it would be James Cook, but definitely not playing James Cook over these guys. Quarterback, looks like we are locked in. I think that you just have to go ahead. You have to play James Cook in this flex. I am excited about T. Higgins in this matchup, but obviously James Cook in a super high scoring offense, James Cook has the receiving role. And at the same time, you are just in a spot with pretty much the guaranteed opportunities where Higgins is mainly a projection. Now, Dark Wing coming out with the trade. This is T. Higgins and Zach Charbonnet versus A.J. Brown. So Zach Charbonnet is only going to have 1 week of value left. It's A.J. Brown easily here, my friend. I think that T. Higgins is a very interesting quote-unquote buy low candidate, but you're not buying low on this point. You're paying 150% what sticker price is. Let's go A.J. Brown. Okay. Now, Larry coming out with a question here. This is Drake London, James Conner versus Justin Jefferson. So I have James Conner in the Flock League. The wide receiver I have closest ranked to London would be like Devonta Smith. And PSA, y'all can go tell Avery in the Flock League, I'm down tonight to trade away Smith and Conner for Justin Jefferson. Here, my friend, it's very easily. Just go get Justin Jefferson, especially now that he dodges the quad and looks like he's fully good to go. Now, Chief Reefer coming out saying we need just this filled out. So wide receiver, obviously, A.J. Brown, not a play this week. Have to put Kincaid there at tight ends. And then here at the flex, we're choosing between Ford, Swift, Akers, Brown, Hunt, Warren, Dowdle. It's really between Swift and Akers for me. We already saw Akers at 74.5 total yards for his Underdog pick. You actually have the same thing with DeAndre Swift, 74.5 total yards. Swift is at lower 12.05 fantasy points. Akers is higher, lower, I believe a little bit higher than this based off the the touchdown upside he has. Okay. K-Makers is 12.55. I think you maybe have a little more receiving upside with Swift, but it's definitely between one of these two running backs. It is kind of up to you here. Can y'all spam the chat? Would y'all rather have DeAndre Swift or Cam Akers? Would y'all rather have DeAndre Swift or Cam Akers? Please let me know in the live chat. Okay. Akers, Swift, Akers, Swift, Akers, Swift, Akers, Swift, Akers, Swift, Akers, Akers. It does look like maybe we have slightly more people in on Akers at this point. So we'll go, like I said, it's extremely close. I'm playing both guys in my flex spots in the Flock League this week. I think both guys are in good spots. Now, going over to this for Casey Betts, wide receiver, we're locked in with Harrison Lamb. There's no way we could pivot there. Tight end, phenomenal options with both Kincaid and Laporta. Neither have been great so far this season. I think they will be solid going into the future. We will go with Laporta, though. Definitely a little concerned, but we're going to do it. Here at running back, we go Charbonnet. Charbonnet has every single target of the backfield, usage at the goal line, full 3-down workload. Obviously, we play Derrick Henry over Najee and Aaron Jones as well. And then going down to the flex, I don't really think we can consider the receivers here like Waddle, Rome, Johnston. It really is going to be between the running backs, such as Aaron Jones, Najee Harris. But I do think we go with Aaron Jones for the receiving work that he should be looking at in Minnesota this week. But is this a different team from Casey Betts? We got a lot of Casey Betts teams to get through real quick. Now here, wide receiver, we have Ladd, Keon, Rome as our primary options. Honestly, I probably would have given you a different answer at the beginning of the week, but now that Keenan Allen is fully ruled out, I actually think we go ahead and take Rome Odunze here. Ladd McConkey doesn't look viable with the Justin Herbert ankle. Even if Herbert does play, I'd expect him to be a little limited. I'm going down to the flex spot just to make sure that we don't want to pivot anything else. Akers versus Moss is a close situation in general. Like I said, I do think that Zach Moss has a very good matchup this week, but at the same time, Moss will have to deal with some touches going in the direction of Chase Brown. And actually, if you look at Zach Moss versus Cam Akers, on Underdog, they do have Cam Akers scoring more points, which is interesting to note. I think it's a very good matchup for Moss. It's close enough for me that I'm not going to take Moss out of your lineup and put Akers in. But it is just something to think about here, my friend. But let's move this over. This is a trade question from ResDog says, is this any good or should we pass? Thanks for the time. No, thank you so much, my friend, for being a member of the flock. So here we're trading Connor Godwin for Harrison and Shaheed. I would be interested. Do we have our teams linked? Perfect. So please, if y'all can, even if y'all are just submitting a start set question or a trade question on the site, definitely link your teams. That way I can see the overall roster that you have. I can see the league settings. So here right now we have Barkley, Waddle, Worthy, Laporta, Stroud, Jacobs, so St. Brown. So we do have a monstrous team. And at the same time, it's only a 10-team league where you start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So the depth here doesn't really matter nearly as much about just getting the best player in the deal. So in that case, I would actually want to go ahead and I would want to take Harrison. We're going to take Marvin Harrison Jr. I think in a different format with a different team context, it can be different, but let's just get the best player in such a shallow league. Now, Jay Brooks, I believe this is a long-time member of the flock. Going to be excited to check this team out for you. And this better be a dynasty league, my friend. For us to be this much better than the rest of our league, where we are sitting with approximately double the value of teams 6 through 12. Like, we have more value on our roster than the bottom almost 4 teams. Like, the bottom 3 teams combined, we have more value on our squad. So this better be a dynasty team. This better have taken us years to build. If it's a redraft format, my guy, run for the hills. Your league mates have no idea what they're doing. It says, league mates don't like trading with me anymore, seeing as I am the back-to-back champ through the first 2 years of this league. How would you go about navigating and selling guys like Amari, Deshaun, etc. in that case? I don't want to sell assets for 50 cents on the dollar. So yeah, this does look like it's a dynasty. It's a dynasty 12-team super flex format. So obviously, this is a juggernaut team where we are in the lucky situation in which we don't necessarily just have to think short term. We don't have to just think long term. We are thinking about both at all times. We are the favorite in this league at all times. And what's going to be difficult for us is if we were to go through and look to sell off assets like, say, Amari Cooper, how are we supposed to potentially get, say, I don't know. How are we supposed to get a buyer of Amari? Because if somebody's buying a player like Amari Cooper in this league, they have to reasonably be able to convince themselves that they can go up against our team. Where right now we are currently sitting with Jalen Hertz, Anthony Richardson, Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. Running back, we have Bijan, Barkley, McCaffrey, Jacobs, Jordan Mason. Wide receiver, we have Jefferson, St. Brown, Neighbors, London. Tight end, we have Hawkinson, Dallas Goedert. Obviously, we don't have many picks. Who cares? We're at the very top. So for a team in your league to think, okay, yeah, I can contend this season, they have to be delusional. Or they have to be maybe one of the other strong teams. I mean, maybe the hot girl at a bar, maybe this is the only other team that can talk themselves into thinking that they have a shot to contend, right? But so honestly, if I look at a team like this, I would say your best shot of going through and selling assets would be selling the rookies, selling the long-term value, because there will be the majority of teams in this league that are instead looking to rebuild. And going over to quarterback, yeah, obviously Deshaun Watson is somebody that could potentially be a viable sell for us. We're never starting Deshaun Watson. He's our QB4. But what team can convince themselves that they're going to contend and they need Deshaun Watson right now? So the only person that's buying Deshaun Watson from you in this kind of league is a team that thinks that they can then turn around and flip Deshaun Watson for a profit. So the only person that's buying Deshaun Watson in this league is somebody that's buying him for 50 cents on the dollar. Like for that's why you're getting these offers reasonably. Now, if you're looking at Trevor Lawrence, there can be a rebuilding team that's thinking for 2025 that thinks, oh, okay, maybe I could use Lawrence here. So I think if you were looking to sell a quarterback, Lawrence is the piece that you need to move off of. Going over to wide receiver, I 100% agree with you. There's no way that we even need the wide receiver depth piece like Amari Cooper. So if we're looking at potentially going through and making a move here at the wide receiver position, I think what you may end up having to do is you may end up, instead of selling Amari Cooper, the only wide receiver you could potentially sell is Malik Neighbors. And obviously you would charge an arm and a leg. Obviously he's an elite level asset in Dynasty. But maybe you could sell Neighbors to a team that's convinced that, oh, okay, I'm rebuilding and Neighbors can't help me for the long term here. Or Adonai Mitchell. Adonai Mitchell is a much better example. There's no shot in which we can get any value for Amari, but we could potentially get value for AD. So I think if we're looking at what to do here, we're just trying to sell off the wrong assets. We have to understand that really the only assets that your league mates are going to be interested in will be these long-term pieces. When we are such strong contenders, if we don't need these veteran depth pieces, maybe we sell the younger players in a similar range and you can squeeze a little more value out that way because it's more in line with what the rest of your league could potentially look for. Really do appreciate you, my friend. Really hope that I was able to potentially help you out in some way here. And yeah, I mean, obviously this is just an absolute juggernaut squad. There's not much that you can do here outside of just convincing the rest of your league mates to make sure they are paying their league dues and sending you your money every single year. But let's go over to this trade question from Darkwing. This is T. Higgins and Zach Charbonnet for A.J. Brown. We actually already answered this. Looks like this was a duplicate, but we will take A.J. Brown yet again. Charbonnet only is about 1 week left to value, and we'll refresh this. So if you have any free questions that you want to answer, just go ahead and drop them in the chat, and I will be happy to get to them. But, Sus Boy says, should I trade Shaheed for Austin Eckler? Man, I don't see why. Like, Shaheed looks like he could potentially be that viable flex play for you at the moment. Whereas Austin Eckler just doesn't. Like, maybe if you were to potentially get an injury to, like, Ryan Robinson, then all of a sudden Eckler sees 75% of the work in this backfield, then at that point, he could be someone we're looking at. But as of right now, there's really just no shot. Okay. Let's move this over. Vex says Shaheed or Amari in the flex. I think this is like the range that you should be asking about with Shaheed, not Eckler, to be honest. Amari's had great target volume. If you actually look at the projections on Underdog, Amari and Shaheed are extremely close. Right now, you have Amari currently at 52.5 receiving yards. Higher, lower, you have Shaheed over there at 49.5. I think Shaheed has big play potential in a way that Amari doesn't. But at the same time, I think Amari maybe gives you a higher floor here. So I'd probably go ahead. I honestly take Amari. I know most people are not going to like that, though. Okay. Slammin says Zay Flowers or DJ Moore for the flex. I'm going to go DJ Moore, especially now that you have no Keenan Allen. And I saw somebody say that flockfantasy.com needs work on mobile and the iPad. 100%. Yeah, we just went through and we did this massive overall redesign with flockfantasy.com. The developers are still working on optimizing things, pushing out updates literally every single day. I'm sure you'll notice over the next week, over the next 2 weeks, definitely over the next month, that it's a lot easier to use on mobile, a lot easier to use on your iPad than it is right now. Okay, let's move this over. Miguel says Dobbins, Demarcus Robinson, or Christian Kirk in the flex. So I very much am concerned a little bit here about J.K. Dobbins. If you are looking at Dobbins, it is a tough situation in which it's a matchup going up against the Steelers. That's going to be the toughest one he's played all year. You have the injury to Herbert, potentially limiting this offense in general, but you still have to play him based off how good Dobbins has been if we're going to be comparing to these other waiver wire options. Now, Brian says, what are the pick'em slips for tomorrow? I actually submitted one with, I believe, Dobbins fewer than 74.5 total yards. And we took the free gimme with Underdog of Manning higher than half a total yard. So that was a 10 to win 30. And we really just need Dobbins to come through tomorrow. We can make one real quick with the gimme pick. So let's use the gimme pick here. And obviously it just doesn't matter what we use this on, but we can go ahead and we can make a little pick'em slip that we like. I actually don't mind Jacobs for more than, let's save it. Let's save it real quick. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out what looks appealing here. Oh, okay. This is what we want. We want to go in on Gibbs. We're going to be going with the Jahmyr Gibbs. Actually, we can apply the just free give me with Josh Jacobs. We're going to go Jahmyr Gibbs to have more than 70.5 total yards. And we are to put 15 to win 45. So this is, like I said, I'm almost up 300 on Underdog this year. Not because I'm good at pick'ems, but instead because I am specifically taking advantage of the promos. So make sure you are taking advantage of the promos. We are able to use that free gimme token to get Josh Jacobs lower down to 0. And this is 15 to win 45. And we need Gibbs to go higher than 78.5 total yards. Okay. But let's see this. Davis says Amari or Cam Akers. I would rather have Akers over Amari. I mean, if I'm looking at Cam Akers, this is a running back that not only do you have Mixon out, but you also have Dameon Pierce out, which just does boost the guaranteed touches that he is going to be seeing in this offense. I mean, they are guaranteed here in Houston, and we know this should be a very good offense as well. Okay. Dylan says, Avery said to bench Charbonnet and start ETN. That's why I read the start sit question. You can tell Avery I said this. I'm 2-0. He's 1-1. What does that tell you, my friend? Tells you all you need to know. Plus, if you go ahead and check this out. Right now, if you're looking at the projections of Travis Etienne versus Zach Charbonnet, you have Etienne higher, lower, 78.5 total yards, 12.55 fantasy points. Zach Charbonnet on underdogs, higher, lower, 96.5 total yards. Charbonnet is going to have every single snap, every single touch in this backfield. Higher, lower was 14 fantasy points. Like, for the love of God, if you have Charbonnet, start him this week. Charbonnet, if you look at these pick'ems, is like maybe the 6th highest running back you're going to find. Play Charbonnet over Etienne. I'm very confident with that. Ferd says Ford or Akers. I'm having trouble deciding. I would go Akers over Jerome Ford based off the Deonta Foreman usage. Morgan says start Charbonnet or Jacobs this week. Yeah, I go Jacobs. But I think Jacobs is also a much better play than Etienne. Okay. Hi says Juwan Jennings or Stephon Diggs. Please go Stephon Diggs over Juwan Jennings. Don't overthink that. There's a very big difference between a running back stepping into a job and pretty much being projected to see every single touch due to injuries versus a wide receiver stepping in. Big difference between the two. It's much easier to project the running back. But let's go back over to flockfantasy.com, get through some more of these questions. Like I said, you can always ask whatever question you have over there on flockfantasy.com. Be super happy to answer it, whether it's a start sit question, trade question, full-blown roster review. And I do want to reiterate as well that if you wanted a roster review, definitely the cheapest way to get it, plus a bunch of promos, is actually taking advantage of what we have over there on Underdog Fantasy. If you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog, you're going to be getting a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, with promo code FLOCK, you're going to get that free team review token we just used, the free CD Lamb pick, more than less than half total yard. If you're new to Underdog on top of it, a free Patrick Mahomes pick, more than less than half a total yard, and a free team review on flockfantasy.com. So if there's anybody in here that is not taking advantage of this yet, I don't know what the hell you're waiting for. Make sure you do with a link in the description and comment section. Just after you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog and make that $10 deposit, make sure you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address. That way I'm able to accredit your account with the free team review voucher. Okay. Let's move this over. And yeah, going back to this question from Dylan, please start Charbonnet over Etienne here. And then down for the flex, I think you go Neighbors. I think if you're looking at a non-PPR format, you can go Etienne, but with this being a full PPR, you go Neighbors. Okay. Now, JDP coming out with a question. Here, wide receiver between Tank Dell, JSN, Xavier Worthy. I'm not considering these other three names. It's actually a very tough situation. I think I probably go Tank Dell just because of the projections that you have in this passing offense. I don't know if we get another 49 dropbacks for Geno Smith in Seattle here, especially going up against Miami where you have no Tua. So we're going to expect that this is a situation in which we probably don't have the need to air the ball out as much in the second half if you're Seattle. Going over to quarterback, we started Kyler over Rodgers. I would have done the same. Running back, yeah, this is a nutso team. Yeah, and then for the flex, we have Achane. Phenomenal team. I think, yeah, you just go ahead and you start Dell over JSN. Now, Jake VD coming out. This is a team where we need to figure out quarterback. I'm going to go Daniels. Should be a spot where he's having to drop back a ton to keep up with Cincinnati. It's a toughish matchup for him. But at the same time, I mean, this is a situation in which you have all the rushing upside in the world. So even if the passing volume's not there, he can get there regardless. Going over to the flex, Jordan Mason, must-start guy every single week that you have no McCaffrey. Looking at the Jordan Mason projection that you actually have right now, Jordan Mason's at 112 total yards, higher or lower. I don't know if there's a single player on Underdog that's higher than that. He literally may have the highest projection on Underdog right now. I mean, literally compare this to Bijan Robinson. Bijan's at 107, which is freaking nuts. I rank Bijan over Mason because of the receiving usage. So, and then going over to the other flex spot here, I think that really comes down to Jalen Waddle, Brian Thomas Jr. We probably go Waddle. I'm not excited about it in the slightest, but I think you kind of have to. Now, Bills Mafia coming out. This is a trade where we send Connor and Worthy, and we receive James Cook. So I think it kind of depends on a couple different factors. One, our team. If we're looking at the squad, we have Dobbins, Smith, Keon, Ayuk, Kyler, McBride, Hertz, my guy. If this is a one quarterback format, we got to sell either Kyler or Hertz. We have Jamar and Jonathan Taylor as well, so we have a ton of viable options. And at the same time, it's a league where you're going to start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex. So because it's a 10-team format where you only start 2 wide receivers and 1 flex, and we should be able to get somebody of quality off the waiver wire, I think we go ahead and we take James Cook here. I think we take James Cook. Now, Kingo coming out with a trade question. This is Dobbins and Jalen Wright versus Garrett Wilson. It's Garrett Wilson by easily Garrett Wilson. Says, may have to add a mid-round pick swap to sweeten this. It's a keeper league. Is it worth it with the upside? 100% it's worth it with the upside, especially if we can keep Wilson in the long term. But I'd even do it if it's a redraft league. Okay, we already answered that. So let's move this over. And if you have any questions, of course, you can get a guaranteed answer through flockfantasy.com, but you can drop any free questions you have in the chat as well. And I'd be happy to try to answer as many as I can. So just if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat right now. And I know people miss super chats, but to be honest with you, I do not miss super chats at all. This is so much better. I'm able to feel a lot better about the answers I give. Also, every time I give an answer to somebody, it's sent through the site as well. So even if they have to leave the live stream, they still get the answer sent to them. I get to see their league settings. I get to see their entire team. I get to see the entire team of the other person. I get to see their entire league if it's a roster review. So I know some people miss super chats, but I'm telling you right now, we are not going back. This is 10 times better. 10 times better. Chandler says, I just purchased a trade review. Can you see? I'm sure I'll be able to. My friend will pivot it back over and answer that in 1 second. Nick says Purdy or Geno in a 4-point passing touchdown format. So I had this exact same question where my situation at quarterback is I was rostering Brock Purdy and Caleb Williams. And we had no Kittle, no Debo, no CMC. And all of a sudden I went, oh, okay, how can I start Brock Purdy? So I actually cut Caleb because you can't start Caleb anytime soon. Picked up Geno specifically to start him over Purdy. So I go Geno Smith over Brock Purdy. I mean, I'm literally doing it with my own team right now, my friend. Okay. So moving this over. King says Higgins or Akers. I would go Cam Akers. Isaiah says my sleeper team isn't linking to the site. Well, all you have to do is put in your league ID. If you're having an issue putting in your league ID, my friend, please just shoot a message in the Discord in the site issue section. And I'm sure one of the developers will be happy to go ahead and help you out with that. The only instance that we've seen with people that were doing it correctly that were having that issue is if you have like a really weird league format, like you play in a 4-team league. I think we saw some people that play in like a 32-team league were having an issue linking with the site. But if you play in like an 8-team league, 10-team league, 12-team league, 14-team league, 16-team league, should have no problem. Okay. Heavy says, are you the only one answering questions on the Flock site? All due respect, I don't want the devs answering start sits. 100%. I mean, every single question I get, I answer in the live stream. So it's the same thing. I mean, obviously, if you go to flockfantasy.com, you can decide to get a question from myself. You can get a question from any of the other creators on the site there as well. But yeah, you're never going to purchase a question from me and have somebody other than me answer that question for you, my friend. And you'll get the clip of me answering. You'll hear my voice too, you know. Billy says Kyron and Jameson for Jonathan Taylor. I just feel like you could squeeze out a little bit more value. Like, I like the idea of upgrading off of Kyron just based off how bad this offense should be going into the future. But especially if we are adding in Jameson, a player that just has so much value at the moment. I don't see how we can't get to an even better player. Okay. Now, Harry says Kincaid or Jake Ferguson. So Ferguson's actually in a very good spot, but I'm still going to go with Dalton Kincaid, expecting there to be more points scored in Buffalo and just more passing volume to go around in general. Obviously, Kincaid is definitely on watch, where if we get another one of these down weeks and you wanted to pivot over to Jake Ferguson, I'm not going to be faulting you whatsoever. But Ferguson, the first week back from his injury versus Kincaid this week, I think we go with Kincaid. But I think we had a couple questions come in through the site, so let's pull those up in 1 second. But A-Rod says throwing shade at the devs. Low blow. Obviously, we love the devs. We love the devs. Even though in the Flock League video, I, of course, just have to talk some trash to my opponent this week, which I am playing a dev in the Flock League this week. So, of course, we love him, but we got to talk some smack. We have to. Which hopefully they don't mind, which I doubt they will. But let's move back over. Anthony says, if you don't have one of the 3 options to link a team, then the website's useless. Yes, let's go through and let's revisit how useless the website is. Great point, my friend. How useless is the website? No, I don't know. Premium posts, videos, articles, draft guides, podcast, trade calculators, where you can go ahead. You can put in your exact league settings. It makes an adjustment on how to value players appropriately to the exact league settings that you're in. You can even select what set of values you want to be using. Let's use Mason's values. Would we rather have CeeDee Lamb? No, we're not going to be giving away CeeDee Lamb. Let's go CeeDee Lamb versus, I don't know. Let's trade away a low-end or a high-end, a mid RB1. Let's trade away Kyron Williams, a wide receiver that's currently injured, in Jalen Waddle. What side? Oh, we win with the CeeDee Lamb side. Super cool. Trade finder, where you can go through and you can see, what are the other trades that involved CeeDee Lamb and Kyron Williams? We actually see somebody traded away Kyron and Ayuk for CeeDee Lamb. We see somebody traded away Kyron Pittman for Charbonnet Flowers. We saw somebody traded away, someone traded away Kyron Pittman, Charbonnet Flowers for Lamb, Singletary, Dow. But regardless, you can see all trades that have realistically been made, real leagues in your fantasy football. In fantasy football leagues. You can go expand that on the trade finder itself. You can go over to the My Teams page. You can go over to rankings and see free rankings on the side, or you can go ahead and you can pull up, do you want to look at week 3 rankings, dynasty rankings, weekly rankings, rest of season rankings? That's all assuming that you didn't link your team. But obviously, if you link your team, there's so much more than that, my friend. So very useless. Very useless. You're correct. But let's go ahead and let's pull up some more of the questions that we have on the sites. Now, this is from Bill's Mafia. This is Chase Smith at wide receiver, McBride at tight ends, Running back, we have Connor Taylor. And then quarterback, we have Jalen Hertz or Kyler Murray. Highly recommend us going through and looking to throw one of these quarterbacks on the trade block. Of course, my friend, you have no A.J. Brown in Philly right now. So honestly, if you're looking at the projections that you have in their respective offenses, you're in a very interesting situation in which the passing volume should dramatically come down for A.J. Brown. For Jalen Hurts. To go ahead and look at Hertz this week, on Underdog, they currently do have him at 21.75 total fantasy points. If you're looking at Kyler Murray, I'm surprised there's another Kyler in sports, but you're looking at Kyler with 20.05. So I definitely think, especially in a matchup against Detroit, where it should be a very high scoring game in general, that this is actually a much closer call than it will be in other weeks when A.J. Brown is fully healthy. But honestly, we still probably go with Jalen Hurts just because what we have seen with the rushing upside between these two QBs is Jalen Hurts does just have significantly more rushing upside. Okay, so let's move this over to our next one. Now, love thy neighbors coming out. Okay, so this is something we have to really consider here, my friend. If you trade away Malik Neighbors, you have to change your entire team name and you have to change your entire personality. How that will negatively impact your team morale if you were to do that in week 3, that's something that is a drawback if you were wanting to make a trade like this, my friend. So looking at this, pivoting from Neighbors to Devontae Adams, it's a lateral move, up to you. Stafford, not even worth the raw spot, so we're trading Pitts for Burrow. I'd rather have Pitts. So I'm actually going to keep Neighbors based off the target share that we just saw in New York this past week. I think both offenses are really bad, but it does seem like Neighbors is the ascending asset. And of course, guys, in terms of site support, we have thousands of people using flockfantasy.com. I cannot do customer support during the live stream. So please, if you're having an issue, send a message in the Discord in the site issue section. You can find the Discord link in the description of this, and one of the developers will be very happy to help you out. But I'm sorry I can't be doing site support for, if we have 1 out of every 10,000 users dealing with an issue, then I'm just going to be doing site support all day in these live streams. I can't do that. Please go to the link in the description. Okay. Chandler says, that my trade to about league. Does that change it? If you're saying it's a 2 quarterback format, then yes, it does change it. If it's a 2 quarterback format, we go Burrow and Adams, my friend. Yeah, we go Burrow and Adams if it's a 2 quarterback league. Sorry, thank you. I honestly, my fault. The league analyzer did pull that this is a 2 quarterback format. I should have seen. I did not, and that is my mistake. Actually, we should have pulled this up so everybody can see the comments and everything previously. But Jowett Hoodie, happy to see you, my friend, says, and always out here on the site, says, I still have Deonta Foreman on the waiver wire, Gesicki, but can't decide for the receiver and the 2 flex spots. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's pull this up. Wide receiver, we are choosing between Rome, who looks a little bit appealing now that you have no Keenan Allen. We have Keon Coleman. Honestly, at the beginning of the week, I think we would have told you Keon. But at this point, I think that we're probably just going to go ahead and take Rome Odunze with no Keenan. Now, moving down further than this to the flex spots. Here we have no Kittle, having no A.J. Brown. Legette's not viable just yet. For Quentin Johnston, you do have Justin Herbert banged up. So it is a tougher situation in general. I think we go Jalen Warren. I would play Jalen Warren over Deonta Foreman in a full PPR format. And then I actually think we do go back to Keon. Despite the 0-point performance this past week, I still have faith in him over guys like Jalen Naylor, where I think Keon Coleman's going to be in a much better offense. And at the same time with Keon Coleman, this is a wide receiver that did run the most routes of any Bills receiver and played the most snaps of any Bills receiver in weeks 1 and 2. Okay. Let's move this over to our next question. This one coming out from Snubs. Here for the flex, we are looking at Kirk Najee, Waddle, Corum, Singletary. So most weeks, I definitely think you go ahead and you take Jalen Waddle here. However, honestly, especially if Justin Herbert's either going to be out this game or not 100%, I actually think we go ahead and we take Najee Harris over Jalen Waddle, operating under the assumption that, hell, the Pittsburgh Steelers may be winning at this. I mean, maybe winning in the fourth quarter now that they are favored in this game. It does pain me to bench Jalen Waddle. It pains me to have Waddle this low. But it's kind of just something that we are going to have to deal with. Let's hit next. And let's go and answer some of the questions for free in the live chat. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them down there in the chat. And also, if you have not done so already, please go down there, drop a like on this live stream. It looks like maybe 1 out of every 12 or so of y'all have hit that like button. So if you're 1 out of the 12, much love. I really do appreciate you. If you're not, fix your life. Hit that like. But let's look at this. Yeter says, can you get the Bucs or the Raiders defense? Are you talking? Maybe that's referring to somebody else in the chat. I'll say, obviously, the Raiders defense looks phenomenal this week going up against Carolina. But what's interesting about the Raiders defense as well is long-term here, they actually have a really good schedule over the next few weeks. Like, it isn't just a week 3 pickup for the Raiders. Like, let me go ahead and pull up their schedule here. The Raiders get the Panthers this week. The Raiders get the Browns next week. The Raiders get the Broncos the week after. And then the Raiders get the Steelers the week after that. If you pick up the Raiders, you could presumably start them for the next 4 weeks straight. Like, the Raiders DST should be at a premium right now. In the Flock League, these clowns were dumb enough to drop the Raiders defense. I really wanted to go out there and pick them up and actually look to start them over the next month. But I have the Niners defense. And the Niners have the Rams this week. And then the Niners have the Patriots next week. So it's like, okay, the Rams are very interesting, but I can only start 1 defense. Definitely am not trying to roster 2. So sadly, I did not get to take advantage. Okay, so let's move this over. Elijah says start Stephon Diggs or T. Higgins. I think it's close enough here to just go ahead and take Stephon Diggs. I do like the upside that T. Higgins has coming back into this offense, but not a situation where you have Diggs that you would have to go through and roll the dice with it. Because while I do expect that the Cincinnati Bengals offense is much better going into the future than what it has been through the first 2 weeks, also the Houston Texans offense is phenomenal as well. Daryl says, would you rather have Michael Pittman Jr. or Braylon Allen? If Breece Hall is healthy and on the Jets, I'd rather have Michael Pittman Jr. If Breece Hall goes down, I'd rather have Braylon Allen. Eric says, talk me out of it. Want to start Rome over Calvin Ridley. Okay. I don't know how hard it is going to be to talk you out of it, my friend, but I'm going to try my best. Obviously, this is not everything here. I do not want to act like it is. But it can be useful to just maybe put some context over this situation. Right now, you are sitting with 44 total receiving yards and 3 total receptions this season for Rome Odunze. Dear God, this is making the computer go slow. Going over to Calvin Ridley, on the other hand, we have 127 receiving yards, 7 receptions, the receiving touchdown, and at the same time, I believe Ridley has the rushing touchdown as well. I think if you wanted to value Rome over Ridley rest of season, you can. Looking at the rookie wide receiver that we are going to expect to continue to improve, with the rookie quarterback that we are going to expect to continue to improve. However, for you to make that call this week before we see the Rome breakout, that does seem like a very, very aggressive thing to do. Okay. But let's move over Tanish says, should I start the Pittsburgh defense when I'm starting Dobbins at the flex? Never think that, oh, I can't play this defense because I have this player in my lineup. Legitimately just play the best plays. If the Pittsburgh Steelers defense are your highest ranked defense of the week, then I would go ahead. I'd play the Pittsburgh Steelers defense. If J.K. Dobbins is your highest ranked flex play of the week, I would play J.K. Dobbins. The only instance that I'm really considering like, oh, my defense is going up against my running back or oh, my defense is going up against my quarterback is if it's like a Monday night where we already know, okay, maybe I need 20 points or maybe I need 10 points. Maybe I need 40 points. And then at that point, we are definitely thinking about how the correlation impacts our lineup in general. But if it's a situation in which it's Sunday, we have no idea how many points we need, you just play the best plays. Okay. But let's move over to the site. I think we had a few more questions coming in. Of course, do want to reiterate, you can ask any questions you want through flockfantasy.com, get a guaranteed answer. Definitely, you can get a start sit question, trade question, full-blown team review. If you wanted a team review, definitely the cheapest way to do it and what I'd recommend doing is going over to Underdog Fantasy, where you can find that link in the description, find that link in the comment section, in the live chat. If you use promo code FLOCK, you're going to get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, with promo code FLOCK, you will get that CeeDee Lamb free pick, more than less than half total yard for tomorrow. You'll get a Patrick Mahomes free pick, more than less than half total yard for tomorrow night as well. And on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, you'll get that free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single night. Just make sure you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog. That way I know which account to credit the free team review with. But let's move this over. So right now, looking at this trade from Dylan, we're selling Neighbors for Ayuk, lateral move, up to you. And we are packaging Etienne and Higgins for Devon Achane, getting that clear upgrade. Honestly, I still think Achane's potentially a sell-high candidate. If you can pivot over to Amon-Ra St. Brown, pivot over to Justin Jefferson, go get one of those true elite level wide receivers and not have to be concerned about this offense possibly taking a step backwards with no Tua. But here, we don't need to be stressing. Here, this is a very easy price to just go and buy Devon Achane. Yeah, this is the side that we are going to want here, my friend. But let's go over to our next question. This is coming out from C. Buffett. This is a start sit question. We need to pick a flex between Carson Steele, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson, Josh Downs, and Terry McLaurin. So next time, instead of typing it in the comment box, all you have to do is actually just list the players down here and drop them as the guys that you were considering. But honestly, what I would do here is I'd be looking at either Carson Steele or Terry McLaurin. But because you don't have Kareem Hunt this week, I'm actually going to go ahead and take Carson Steele. I think we take Steele because there is no Hunt. Okay. Let's move this over. Now, Dylan says trade Waddle and Shaheed for Brandon Ayuk. I would, 100%. We actually saw a trade in the Flock League. Somebody traded Amari and Jackson Smith and Jigba for Brandon Ayuk. And honestly, I think based off the Tua injury, that price point's steeper than what you have with just trading Waddle for him pretty much. Obviously, Shaheed's been very good, but at the same time, I do think you should naturally expect we actually get some regression from this New Orleans Saints offense. Okay. But let's move this over. I'm trying to debate. Okay, it looks like we have a few more questions coming in. Dawgs says Ford or Akers at RB2. Please play Cam Akers over Jerome Ford. I don't think it's the easiest call by any means, but last week we did see Deonta Foreman actually play more snaps than Jerome Ford. And in the case of Cam Akers, when you have no Mixon and at the same time you have no Dameon Pierce, both will be missing this game. it does appear that Akers is just slated to pretty much have everything. And at the same time, Akers is going to be in a much better offense as well. Okay. Matt says, I kind of want to start Juwan Jennings in the flex over Amari. You can do it, but I probably wouldn't. I would probably be nervous. Franco says DK or Jameson. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take DK over Jameson both for this week and for the long term. A-Rod says Akers going against a tough defense, though. So, yeah, I understand that you actually have Minnesota currently leading the NFL in sacks. The Minnesota Vikings have been a very good defense. We actually saw Jordan Mason have a fine day running last week. And at the same time, if we're looking at sportsbooks at the moment, we're still getting the Houston Texans with an above average total in terms of what their projected points are. So honestly, I'm not too concerned here. Okay, let's see. Timothy says Akers or Moss. I think it's very, very close. I think Moss has a much better matchup, and his offense actually probably scores more points this week. But at the same time, Chase Brown will have some work, whereas Akers will just have everything to himself. Okay. But let me move back over to the site and see if we have any more questions to go through. So this is a start sit question from Mitchell. Says, need help with the flexes. Tank has let me down twice. Also, thanks for all the help on Discord. No, thank you, my friend. I'm sorry for any issues that you had. Going to be super excited to go ahead and check this out. So obviously we go Laporta and we set up a prayer that Laporta plays better. This looks a lot like my team. My team, I have Smith. My team, I have Connor. My team, I have Laporta. I'm rooting for you, my guy. Going over to the flex spots, we have a bunch of different pieces to choose from. Obviously, a lot of these guys are out. We have no Brooks, no Pacheco. Chuba, Thielen, honestly, are not interesting for me here. I think I go ahead. I think I take Tank Dell. And then, honestly, I think that the other spot I go with is a little bit risky. But we go Carson Steele in this game that should have no Kareem Hunts. So if you have no Hunt, and I do expect P. Ryan to have a considerable workload, particularly as a receiver. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if we get 15 carries from Carson Steele and what should be a pretty good offense. Actually, I have not seen the projections on Underdog for Carson Steele since maybe the beginning of the week. What do they have Steele at? Type in Steele, you get to see all the Steelers before we actually get to Carson. They have Carson Steele at 57.5 total yards, higher, lower. But honestly, kind of decent odds to score a touchdown. See, I think we go with Steele. But Hall Johnny coming out with our next start sit says, we have Pollard locked into the flex, but do I go Neighbors? I'm facing a banged up team. All right, so if we're looking at this, wide receiver between Nico and Rice, I definitely think you have to play them over Neighbors. So honestly, for the flex, I don't see you putting Neighbors down here as a possibility. I definitely go with Parkinson over these other tight ends. In terms of what we would do between Tony Pollard and Malik Neighbors in a full PPR format, I would go with Malik. With Pollard, if you had no Spears, I think it'd be very, very appealing because he would have absolutely everything on third down and you would have the receiving volume as well. But I'm expecting that we should have Spears playing this game. But yeah, thank you again. And hope that we were able to help you out here. But let's move this over. And I think we're probably going to be waking up like 6 in the morning tomorrow. That way we can live stream for 5 hours before the game. So, of course, would love to answer as many questions as I can. And I stream every single day. So if you have not done so already, subscribe, answering free questions every single day, answering 100% of the questions that come through flockfantasy.com as well. Make sure you come hang out with me before the games tomorrow. If I wasn't able to get to your question, you can always ask it through flockfantasy.com, get a guaranteed answer. You can ask that question at any time of the day. I'll answer it on the live stream, and you'll actually get a clip sent through flockfantasy.com automatically of me answering that for you with everything filled out. So even if you can't make the live stream, you can still get your answer, or even if you ask and have to leave early, you still get your answer. And yeah, or you can just come hang out in the live stream with us tomorrow morning, and I'll be trying to answer as many for free as we can in the chat as well. But definitely recommend taking advantage of all the Underdog promos that they have available to y'all this week. You can find the link to Underdog Fantasy in the description, in the comment section, in the live chats. If you use code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, with code FLOCK, you'll get a free team review in one of these live streams. Just make sure you have an account set up on flockfantasy.com with the same email address. Plus, you'll get that free CeeDee Lamb pick, more than less than half a total yard for the Sunday night game. And you will get a free Patrick Mahomes pick on top of that, more than less than half a total yard for that Sunday game. So make sure you take advantage of that. You can find that link in the description section, comment section. And yeah, I'll be up super early. I'll be live streaming probably before you're awake. So come out, hang out with me in the morning. I'll be trying to answer as many questions for free in the live chat. And actually, I'm going to end this and walk the dog. I'll be on my phone. So after I end this live stream, go to the comment section, ask any start to questions you have. I'll try to respond to as many as I can down there as well. But yeah, do that in the comment section, not the live chat. That way I can easily just reply to you. But thank you again. Appreciate you, and hope I get to see you out with the live stream tomorrow morning. If I can't, hope that you're able to win your matchup.